started. It's 8 o'clock. I know we've got time crunch. Good morning and welcome to the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting for February 26, 2020. The purpose of the committee meetings are for the city departments to pass along information to the city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance mandates the city administrator as the chair of the committee meetings. By ordinance, the committee makes no formal decisions on committee matters. Rather, items are voted and moved to a mayor and council meeting for consideration and vote, or staff receives guidance from the committee regarding a matter. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during the committee meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7 p.m. in the city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month. The first item on today's agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting for January 29th, 2020. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Tizer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous. Thank you. Second item on the agenda under Community Development, Hill Street Small Area Master Plan. Ms. Dybel.
So last fall, we worked through and went through the Hill Street Master Plan. We had the consultant, we had the public meetings and everything, and then we brought it to you in October of last year. And at that point in time, you discussed it, but you didn't make any decisions on it. We have brought it back to actually have a final decision whether we either move this forward or we end this. The property owners have been asking what's going on. They would like to know if this is going to move forward. So what happened with this is, if you take a look here, we looked at 2 blocks on Hill Street that went from Atlanta Street over to Forest, and these are the 2 blocks that were looked at. They came up with different plans. So this was option A. We had option B. These came out of the public meetings. And then option C, and I believe this is the draft plan, that was the one that was finalized, that was discussed at length with all the public when they came through. And what they looked at is some townhomes, some apartments, some commercial, and then we left the police area alone and all that city-owned property alone, and the ATT building that's located at Oak and Ellis Street. We didn't do anything with that property. And then what they also did is they left the Hill Street property alone since that was going through the process at the time. So what staff recommended back in the fall was to do a new overlay for this area, looking at allowing uses permitted by right but putting restrictions on them. And so back in the fall, when we brought this through, you chose to discuss it, but you didn't move anything forward. We need to either move this forward or end this project. We want to know we're looking for not just guidance, but some decision made today related to this project. That property owners have been calling us, asking us what's going on.
So, Jackie, Gary.
Floor's open.
Sorry. Can you share with everyone community involvement on this? I remember when I first saw it, I was surprised based on the processes that you went through, so that might be helpful.
Okay, so what we did is we hired TSW. Since they were currently working on the master plan itself, we hired them, and a couple of different groups of people came out for that, and we had several public meetings here in this room and a charrette where they had the public came and they drew up different sections. So we had basically a couple of tables here, and they met and they sat around the tables and drew different sections for each of the different properties. Prior to that, we met with all the property owners that could come in. We informed them all of what we were looking to do. We had a stakeholder meeting with all of them, so it was our first meeting. They met with the consultants and staff. The second meetings we had the public at. So we also did a walk with the consultants, not with the public. But the public were here a couple of times. So what we did was the charrette first and drew the different plan up. And then we had an open house. I believe it was in September of last year before a council meeting down in the atrium where the public came and took a look at it from, I think it was about from 5 to about 6:30. And they took a look and they chose this one here. This one's the one that came out of the open house. And this is the one that we brought to you at committee. So after this was chosen by the public, basically, you know, at most of the area, as you can see here in this last one, we have IX zoning, which is the light blue, the civic zoning, which is the gray, and the purple zoning is DX, which is downtown mixed use. So you have a portion of this, the first one is in the historic district, the other portion is outside, or no, all of it's in, sorry, all of it is in. And so we took a look at that, and with this, staff wanted to create an overlay to allow uses by right with restrictions for these properties. And this is what came out of, like I said, all the public meetings that we had.
Thank you.
So, go ahead.
Can I just, question as far as design, you said, mentioned that there's a building, is the design of the buildings kind of set out as well in the master plan?
The design really wasn't set out, like, so if somebody comes through and wants to do it, they still have to go through the boards for design.
Right, okay.
Basically, what they've done is laid something out, to say, this is what would fit the usage.
The uses, right. And so the part that was that's in the historic district would go through HPC and the other
Yes.
would go through
Yes.
design review board.
So,
Actually, all of it's in the historic district.
It is,
Sorry.
okay.
so this matches the historic district master plan, the Hill Street master plan does?
It's a deeper dive.
Yes.
No, I mean, but it would conform with
Yes.
the historic district
Yes.
master plan, okay.
They use the master plan since they're going through the time, but they delve a little bit deeper. on
Two, you know, I mean, obviously this looks much better than the massive storage units we're getting over there because we didn't plan beforehand for that area. The CVS building I know is up for sale now, right? That's included in this. I guess my issue is now we're in a 31 days now into a 90-day moratorium on multifamily, and this has multifamily in it. And I don't think we're any closer now than we were at the start of this moratorium to figuring out what we're going to do with multifamily, and putting this through with that in place and no guidance is going to cause problems because we're putting through a master plan with multifamily in it that was chosen by the public, and we have no multifamily right now. So until we move further down the road with what we're going to do comprehensively, I don't know if we can throw this through there because what's the point?
That's the reason that we said we have to bring it forward, because we had met with a lot of people, property owners and residents, and they had a certain expectation. But based on the current situation and based on the changes and based on the best practices when it comes to these types of master plan, basically you encumber the property so that you get what you plan for. From a staff perspective, we don't know that it's necessarily ready for prime time. I would suggest that, and it's up to council, that you not move it forward and to allow it to be further vetted as part of the comp plan effort. And
Where we are right now, I mean, I would like to move it forward because I think that it had public input. I think it's going to have some great plans for that area, but where we are as a city right now with the future of multifamily and the future of our code and us being no closer today than we were 30 days ago, I really don't see how I can move this forward.
Well, I'd suggest we move it to comp plan. And look at it then.
Second.
What was the motion, Mayor? To move this to evaluate, okay. So motion to wait and evaluate this during the comp plan process. Is that adequate? Motion made by the mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 3, discussion of convenience stores with fuel pumps as a conditional use request in commercial zoning classifications. Ms. Dybel.
So this was a request by Councilmember Zapata to put on committee to look at convenience stores and fuel pumps as conditional use in the commercial zoning classifications.
Thanks. So, well, we all went through experience recently by the hospital. So I think that makes sense to get mayor and council the saying about where the makes sense to have a fuel pump.
Floor is open.
If you want, I can indicate here, in our code currently, convenience stores with gas pumps is currently allowed as limited use in CX, CC, Parkway Village, and CH, commercial heavy. Okay.
So, Bob, quick question. If we do this, as all conditional uses, you've got to have a health, safety, or welfare issue to not approve it in an area that it is allowed in.
The conditional use, in order to exercise that, you have to, yes, say why, if you're denying it, there's a health, safety, or welfare issue, or that it's needed to ameliorate the conditions on neighborhoods around it.
So here's my concern, and it goes back to what we need to do with our code and the UDC, et cetera, and a really deep dive and comprehensive look at all this is we're throwing a bunch of things in here, and basically what's going to happen is every single thing is going to have to come to this council for conditional use if we continue down this road when we have any issue at all. And instead of having that happen, which is going to A, get political, and B, really take a lot of time and not have have people who are coming to do business in the city guess what is going to happen with the votes constantly, rather than figuring out in these areas what exactly we do want, what exactly we don't want, what exactly should be conditional. But every time we have something come up, we can't come and say, all right, we're going to make this a conditional use and basically bring stuff to council constantly, because it's not clear to people that are doing business, it's not clear to citizens, it's not clear to anybody. So if we do this, I understand there's a situation right now that a lot of people are upset with. But again, this goes back to doing things comprehensively versus bringing stuff when there's a huge outrage, which, in this situation, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm saying this is what I'm talking about when it comes to our code. Because we're going to we're not sending a clear message to anybody.
Floor is open.
So, well, I like to always live and learn. When I'm living experiences, I'm learning from them, good ones or bad ones. And definitely when you have the whole council unanimous voting against something and then happen anyway, I think that that is not good and need to be corrected. And it's not that hard to correct it. So having loopholes or unintended consequences on a UDC doesn't mean you cannot fix them. Once you identify the problem, I normally fix it. I don't let it go and go and go. So that is a simple way to fix, unfortunately not in this case by the hospital, but moving forward. So that is the reason why I'm bringing this forward.
So I have two comments. One question, Ms. Dybel. If this were to pass and become a conditional use, do commercial zoning classifications still have permitted uses, or would this make it so that there's not everything's a conditional use?
There are other permitted uses.
Okay. So I think what it comes down to is we need to decide, and we have a real example to look at. Do we feel the community is better off the fact that the community does not have a say and that gas stations go in basically anywhere there's a commercial zoning? Or do we feel the community is better off if there is just the opportunity for council and the community to weigh in? I feel this is something where a fuel pump is not appropriate in every single commercial zoning classification, or I should say in every single possible location. So therefore, I support moving this forward and initiating this public discussion, because I think the community should have a say and council should have the opportunity to weigh in.
Jackie, just really quick, you mentioned that this was a limited use. Could you explain? So there are certain restrictions attached to it
Yes.
currently. Could you
Sure.
describe what those are?
Right to it, almost, page over. Okay, so limitations, when it's allowed as a limited use, must be the following, subject to the following. All fuel pumps must be located at least 25 feet from any public right-of-way or lot line, and all buildings and, never pronounce this word, the canopy must be located at least 100 feet from all lot lines abutting a residential use. That's letter A. Letter B, a type A or B buffer must be established along all lot lines abutting a residential use. And letter C, all fuel must be stored underground outside of any public right-of-way. Those are the three limitations.
I guess I'm just curious if looking at limited uses is a better way to put parameters around, where they might go and how they might fit, rather than making it a conditional use. And again, I think that the zoning code should be outlined so that it follows, that we've thought these things ahead, so that a property that's designated for commercial, heavier commercial zoning should be able to be used in that way, as set forth in the code.
Again, what I said was not that this isn't a situation in which maybe we should look at this, is that what we're doing is bringing these things constantly instead of fixing what we need to fix. And we need to fix what we need to fix comprehensively rather than doing this constantly. So I think that I could support this going to a public conversation, but I see we've got 2 more of these on after this, and what I'm scared about is for anybody to do anything in this city, they're going to have to come to this council and worry about who's on council, who's not on council, what politics are involved, rather than using data and proper planning to create our code, because this is I feel a slippery slope, but I'll support this moving forward so we can have a public conversation, because we do have a situation in which this has occurred, and I think it deserves a conversation.
So I just want to be clear, because I think you said something that could be confusing to many. I think it was just implied that if these 3 things passed, then for anyone to want to do anything, it's going to have to come in front of council.
Mike, that's not what I said.
So could you help? That's how I heard it.
No, what I said was if we continue down this road, then anytime something comes up, we could have this conversation on anything. You could bring, well, we're going to have a conditional use for a pasta store.
I'd oppose
that. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So what I'm trying to tell you is that this is what we're doing instead of comprehensively planning, putting Band-Aids on.
But no, I think we have to look, so it's a living, breathing document.
I understand that, Mike.
Okay, and so here's what I want to make sure it's understood. I actually fully support a comprehensive look and see where are there other loopholes, where are there other opportunities for improvement. I think we should go through that. I think that would potentially come up with a lot of improvements. And then here's what I believe. A year later, we could absolutely still find that something was missed, maybe something evolves. It's a living, breathing document. And with it, again, the example is if someone comes or there's a discussion, should a pasta store be allowed? That's something I do not feel should be a conditional use. So if any council member were to bring that, I'd strongly say I do not support that. I think these three things here are something that the community should be able to weigh in on and council should be able to weigh in on. And we've got examples for all three of these where I think if the code had been better before, we wouldn't be in some situations that we're in.
Again, you said I. I hear a lot of I believe.
I can only speak,
So
I can
other
only speak
people,
for myself.
okay, but other people might not believe that. So it doesn't make it right or wrong if you believe that. Okay, so moving forward, what I'm saying is we need to make sure that we do a comprehensive look at this rather than what we're doing today.
So,
Floor is open.
thank you. So I have a slightly different problem. I'm not a fan of bans, and basically that's what we're trying to do here. I'm a fan of planning. I'm not a fan of bans. So far, we're banning apartments, townhomes, condominiums, businesses started after 1959. We're looking at convenience stores, gas stations, storage sheds, car washes, therapeutic massages, right? What I'm a fan of incentives. And if you want a candy store on the corner, then you incent the heck out of that corner to have a candy store. And you know what you'll get? A candy store, okay? There's local incentives, there's state incentives, there's federal incentives, there's private incentives to drive these things forward. And for us to attempt to close the barn door after the horses get out on each one of these items, I think it just shows that we're not in command. We're not in command of our land use. We're not in command of what we do. What I don't want to do is I feel, okay? We can't run our city on I feel because you feel one way and he feels another way and other people feel different ways. If there are things that we like to see places, then those things ought to be incented. And the mayor has talked about things like density bonuses, okay? I think we should stop wasting our time doing this stuff and start doing the kinds of things like she's suggested in the places that we suggest to do them. Okay? If you want, for example, old apartments to repurpose, then go find a way to incent them. And it might not just be the city of Roswell's incentive. You may be able to partner with the county, with the state, with the federal government. There's all sorts of opportunities to do these things, but to systematically, individually ban things, I just struggle with that. Now, I understand.
It's an incorrect word.
No, it's a perfect word
No,
for what you're doing.
It's inaccurate. I'll explain why.
There is.
So I got the definition here.
Let me help you. No, I don't need your dictionary, okay? Because what really happens is no developer, all of the people who are going to build something are not going to go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do plans to come before ComDev to do that. And what you create is a de facto ban when you say you have to come before a council for whatever it is you're looking for, because then you're putting it completely at risk because that person who wants to do something on their land does not have the ability, doesn't know with any certainty what they can do, okay? I'm a fan of incentives, and I think that's the way this should go rather than Councilmember Zapata's dictionary definitions, because it is in fact de facto.
And it's not just dictionary definitions, though. Let's look the last 2 years. What's being proposed is this becomes a conditional use, which multifamily is a conditional use. That has not been a ban because, in fact, 100% of multifamily applications last 2 years that have been requested.
Absolutely not
have been
true.
approved.
That's absolutely not
100% of
true.
properties. Name one property that's been
Absolutely
denied.
not true.
Okay, so-
One.
1225 Canton Street, first time.
I didn't say applications, I said properties. Name one property that did not get multifamily.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I want to bring the discussion back to fuel pumps, item 3 of today's agenda, which is discussion of convenience stores with fuel pumps as a conditional use request in a commercial zoning classification. And I do believe on a dictionary definition. That is how you learn words. And ban is officially or legally prohibited. And here is not prohibited, it's a conditional use.
It's a de facto prohibition, and you know it.
No, I don't know it. I don't know
play
it.
semantics.
And why did all those multifamily?
It is semantic. When you talk about legal thing, it's semantic.
It's de facto
No,
ban.
it's a conditional use. So can it still be used if the majority of mayor and council decide that is the right location for a fuel pump. So if you believe that fuel pumps could go anywhere on the commercial corridor, that's fine. I respect that. I do respect that. But, you know, if fuel pumps have to come to mayor and council for discussion, I don't see any problem.
Let me be
And we
clear.
have a very recent example.
Let me be clear. I want to be
Can I finish?
honest with
Let
our
me finish.
citizens.
Let me finish.
I want to be honest with our
Don't be rude.
citizens.
Don't
If
be
you
rude.
want to ban fuel
Don't be
pumps
rude.
in commercial
be
zoning,
rude.
then I think
Don't
you
be
should
rude.
just say,
Let me
this is
finish.
not allowed.
I was
Just say it's
talking.
not allowed.
I was talking. Let
Don't-
me finish. Let me
Don't
finish.
fool the citizens.
Don't be rude. Don't mislead the community.
Well, that's what you're
Please.
doing. That's
So,
what you're doing. You're misleading the
Let me
community,
finish here.
Marcelo.
Let me finish. Let me finish. I let you finish. and you let me finish.
I really don't want you to read the dictionary to me, Marcelo, because I don't need you
I'm
to.
not reading to you. I'm reading to the community. So if you don't want to pay attention, that's fine. You can feel free. So my point is that first, it's a conditional use. Second, we have a very recent example of something that we shouldn't let it happen again. I learned from that. I learned from good things and bad things. And it was a big lesson for me. So this is what immediately say, we need to take care of that so this doesn't happen again in the future. I'm so sorry for the whole community who believe on this decision of mayor and council a few months ago to not allow this fuel pump going on. I'm so sorry for them, but moving forward, I don't want to feel sorry for more members of the community. So maybe some council members might call it political. I call representing the constituent and the citizen of Roswell.
So what I want you to do is put your toes on the line and say, no convenience stores with fuel pumps. Just say it, if that's what you mean, and if that's what this council wants to do. I'm fine with certainty. What I'm not fine with is uncertainty. And when
So-
you say conditional, it's uncertain, please.
So I had the benefit of attending Zoning 101, put on by the Carl Vincent Institute, hosted by the city of Roswell this past Saturday. It was a zoning class that was put on for the boards and commissions, and other folks were invited. I attended. Getting to your point, this is exactly what was discussed in the class as why we're appointed, and the reasons for having conditional uses, and the reasons for working with the living document. The UDC was a template. It was a template that had some adjustments put on for Roswell. It didn't have all of the adjustments put on for Roswell. We lived with it, and we saw the deficiencies in it. And that's what we're charged with. We're charged with fixing them as we go along. Putting conditional uses allows us to look at the health, safety, and welfare. One of the portions of health, safety, and welfare is infrastructure. Does the infrastructure exist to support that use? Those are the types of things that we can consider when it's a conditional use versus a permitted use. And that's why this is important for these points and the other points.
And I agree, living, breathing document needs a lot of changes, needs a lot of work. All those things are facts. What I'm pushing for is certainty. There needs to be certainty in our building code, and property owners need to know with a level of certainty what they can do and what they cannot do. That's all. If we want there to be, in certain districts, in certain places, no convenience stores with fuel pumps, then we should say, no convenience store with fuel pumps here. Okay? And that's fine. That's fine if that's what the council wants to do. But the level of uncertainty in all these areas, okay, creates a significant problem, and it creates unintended consequences that I don't think we really want.
So let me address uncertainty. Developers and builders spend 30% of their development budgets on uncertainty, because that is part of the process when they go into projects that perhaps have a conditional use versus a permitted use where it is certain. That is their choice. That is their decision. They know these things up front. This is part of the business.
So if you're able to take some of that uncertainty out, wouldn't it grow business? Wouldn't more people invest?
In the right situations.
Exactly, that's what we're saying.
But
Let's
we
take it
don't
out
want
and let's
that
do
in the
something
wrong-
comprehensive where we're not just having people guess of what the will of this council is on any given day. And that's what we need to do as a city.
Ms. Dybel, just because I'm concerned, there's a lot of discussion where there's a thought that these are the only 3 uses there. How many permitted uses are there in commercial zoning classifications? And while you look at that, again, going back to there is some uncertainty, and for ideal uses that could go everywhere, those are things that should be permitted. Things where there should be public input should be conditional. And again, going back to multifamily, that has not stopped. The fact that it's conditional did not ban multifamily the last 2 years. In fact, we've seen an enormous increase in multifamily the last 2 years despite conditional use. So I don't see what the issue is on considering moving forward and discussing publicly these 3 things become conditional use. I just don't see what that issue is.
All right, well, we have a variety of different zonings, so basically we're just gonna look at corridor nodes, and there's 6 zoning classifications in the corridor node districts that are commercial. The 7th one is a residential mixed use, so we'll forget about that one. But we have a neighborhood mixed use, commercial mixed use, shopfront mixed use, commercial corridor, Parkway Village, and commercial heavy. And for the benefit of what we've got here, we'll use commercial mixed use, and then we'll look at commercial heavy. A little bit of difference. Under commercial mixed use, permitted, we'll just do permitted, not limited. Permitted by right, single family, 2-family, townhouse, hospice, institutional residential up to 18 residents, institutional residential more than 18, convent, college, university, club or lodge nonprofit, museum, library, nonprofit service organization, place of worship, public use, school private, K through 12, school public, K through 12, school special, conservation area, park, recreation field, reservoir, adult care center, more than 4 aging adults, gym, health spa, yoga studio, facility arts, shooting range, all medical, all office, bail bonds, call center, radio, television station, according to trade vocational business school, rowing club, boat rental, bed and breakfast up to 6 rooms, boutique hotel 7 to 30, hotel motel more than 30 rooms, all personal service, animal care indoor, all restaurants, all retail, art gallery, convenience store without gas pumps is allowed as a permitted use. All research and development, accessory uses. That's commercial mixed use. Under commercial heavy is hospice, the institutional residential, townhouse, college, club or lodge nonprofit, museum, library, nonprofit service organization, place of worship, public use, school private, school public, school special, conservation area, park recreation field, reservoir, adult care center, more than 4 aging adults, gym, health spa, yoga studio, school of the arts, shooting range, special event facility, all medical, all office, bail bonds, call center, radio station, trade vocational, all outdoor recreation, golf driving range, except as listed below, so no riding stable, rowing club, bed and breakfast up to 6 rooms, boutique hotel 7 to 30, hotel motel more than 30, all personal service, animal care indoor, restaurants, retail, art gallery, convenience store without gas pumps is permitted. The other ones are considered limited. Then we have all light manufacturing, or is that, yeah, and research and development. Those are permitted uses in the CH. Oh, helicopter landing area. But the townhouse one, I have to double check. That might have been under one of those classifications.
And I believe that was
So,
updated. But that
anyway.
being said, I think a lot of uses, interestingly enough, I think there's some that actually are more that we should discuss turning into conditional use, but that doesn't stop me from believing
there would be.
that these ones These ones should be.
And that's exactly my point. So at this point in time, instead of doing this every week, I mean, so somebody goes and this doesn't go through and they want to put a shooting range on that corner or a helicopter landing pad. Or I heard an indoor dog where dogs are barking next to the fire station. There's a lot of things that we need to look at. So at this point in time, instead of doing this and continuing bringing stuff through like this, I'm for saying, hey, look, and the UDC is much more than a template. It took 2.5 years to do. 2.5 years of much staff work, citizen work, et cetera, to fit this. So if the UDC doesn't work for the city of Roswell, let's throw the UDC out and start a new process and do a new code, because this is the number one divisive situation in the city, the number one political situation in the city, and maybe we just need to take the comp plan, the strategic plan, and the citizen input and do a new code so we can take this off the table.
Yeah, my proposal today is less dramatic, less extreme than throwing everything away. It's just fixing a specific usage, which is a convenience store with the fuel pumps. I'm not talking about pasta factories. I'm not talking about, anything else. I'm just talking exclusively for convenience stores with fuel pumps. So it's a very easy fix where might give some uncertainty to the convenience store with fuel pumps business, but definitely give it more certainty and more input to the community, more weight to the input from the community. I understand maybe giving more certainty for input of the community might imply a little more uncertainty for a fuel pump company. That's fine, and I can live with that. So as long as we get it right on the right location, but learning my experience for what happened on the corner by the hospital and right next to the fire station, say this cannot happen again with the fuel pump. So it's an easy fix, not that complicated, very simple. And then if any other council member down the road, because I don't need to eat the whole cake at once. I can eat cake piece by piece. That's fine with me. I don't need to eat the whole cake or nothing. That is a kind of extreme situation. So I said, look, there's a problem. Identify the problem. Whoever believes that this is a problem that we have an easy fix, let's do it. Whoever doesn't believe on that, that's fine too. Always can oppose, and we move on. That is the way of doing city business. So I would like to move this forward, and
I will second that, but I want to really call out that I think there's a debate and discussion. Should we fix a part now, or should we fix it all in the future? And I don't think that has to be an or. I think if we see a gap, we see a loophole, we can fix it now, and absolutely we should be moving forward with improving everything in the future. I fully support that, but I don't want to leave loopholes open just because I want to do an even better solution in the future.
So we have a motion on the floor to move forward. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion to move forward by Councilmember Espada, second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further questions or discussion?
And just to clarify, it is initiation, correct?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that I think what we've heard from the community is they don't want convenience stores with fuel pumps at all. And I think that's what we should address, not a Band-Aid that can all of a sudden be torn off. If we don't want them, let's just say we don't want them and take them out.
well, in some location might make sense. That is the point. They give you flexibility.
I don't know, that's not what I'm saying.
They give you flexibility here to say some location might make sense. Some location didn't make sense. Nobody opposed to the fuel pumps in Roswell, but in some places definitely might not make sense. And this is when the committee weighed in and said, look, this doesn't make sense. We believe it doesn't make sense, so it doesn't get approved. So this gives flexibility, all this zoning, to have or don't have fuel pumps.
Okay, In this situation, yes. In other situations, no. In whose opinion? Is it a group of citizens in one neighborhood, and another group of citizens in another neighborhood might disagree, and then we've got council members that agree and council members that don't disagree, and we've got planners who say this should go here because you're planning smart city and traffic patterns, and you've got people. So again, here's what we're doing. We're piecemealing stuff together because our hair's on fire versus doing what we need to do and digging in. We're 30 days into a moratorium that this council voted for, and we're no closer to solving the overall problem.
We're a lot closer to
No, we're
to
not.
solving loopholes.
No, we're not.
I think whether any of us like them or not, fuel pumps are a necessary part of a community. So we need to allow them somewhere. And I think there are some convenience stores with fuel pumps that we would like to see redeveloped as something else.
Here's what
So,
yeah, no, I actually agree. What I'd propose is, because I agree 100% with what you just said, Councilmember Wilsey. Today, I've seconded and will so in support of initiating this amendment. If anyone from this body has recommendations on certain locations in the city where it should be permitted, then I will fully support that. I haven't seen that or heard that, so I think making it fully a conditional use makes sense. But I will 100% support it being permitted in certain areas if we can have that discussion. And that might be something we task the planning commission as well if this passes initiation.
well, again, I would say we are initiating a process with the comp plan and a UDC review to actually look at the map and do those things and get lots of citizen input on. So I think we've got that opportunity just ahead of us.
And I agree completely, and that's where I think another option could be, perhaps a short-term solution is making this a conditional use, and then through that comp plan analysis, maybe then we can actually remove it from being a conditional use to permitted based on certain locations. An example of something we've done is in the historic district, CC, I believe, was not available. Cottage courts were not available in the historic district originally, and that's something that we added. So we added to kind of create that flexibility. I think this could be something where I think this is solving a loophole, and it's an important thing we move forward. But I'm fully supportive of us enhancing it, us improving it, and then maybe we don't need the conditional use in the future.
Any further questions, Mayor?
I've got a couple of comments, and I've said this before. I keep using the same analogy, and I'll use it again. If I'm at home and cut myself with the paring knife and I need stitches, we're going to put something on, a Band-Aid somehow on that while I'm being transported to the hospital. One thing I'd like to point out, too, is, we talk about a comprehensive deep dive into the UDC, and I'm not opposed to that, but what I have noticed, because I functioned as an elected under the old zoning code, and I've functioned as an elected under the UDC, and I see that the pendulum has swung from here under the old code to here under the UDC. I don't know if it was designed to do that, but it took away a lot of the purview of the electeds when we adopted the UDC. So I don't have any problem looking at conditional uses. I don't have any problem putting a Band-Aid on something. Zoning ordinances do change. It's the nature of them. They change all of the time. And Jackie, how many, just ballpark, I know you couldn't even imagine, but how many changes do you think we made to the old code over 20 years?
To the
Hundreds,
old code?
Thousands, probably.
The one prior to the UDC?
Yeah.
Well, since my portion of time here, I'd say close to 100 and then prior to me, numerous. There was a whole rewrite in 2003 of the ordinance, and there were numerous text amendments. If you go through the documents, you could see a lot of text amendments prior to 2003 and after 2003, between 2003 and 14.
And I remember in 2003, the reason why we did the rewrite was to incorporate incorporate all of the changes that had been made prior to that. So I'm just not seeing where, this is just a huge problem, and I support it being initiated, and we'll just take it from there.
Again, I do see it being initiated, but what I've heard from the public and many of the campaigns that were run this previous year is the UDC is broken. We need to fix the code, we need to do this, we need to do that. And Band-Aids will not do that long term. So we can do the Band-Aids in the meantime, and that's fine, but we are not doing the work we need to do to fix this, to stop the constant barrage that is tearing the city apart.
And I don't think anybody's arguing with you on that. What I'm
I do.
hearing is that everyone would support a comprehensive look at the UDC, but it's not one or the other. Am I hearing wrong?
I think you are. In the meantime, I think we are doing things with no data. We're just doing things just because, and it's because I feel or so and so feels, and we have no data behind anything we're doing. We're just throwing stuff out there, and that's my problem.
I agree with Mayor, you 100%, nobody opposed here to do a whole review of the UDC at some point, but meanwhile, we need to eliminate the loopholes, and data exists on this particular point. We just have recently an issue where without mayor and council voted against and happened anyway. So more data than this, I don't know how much we need, but yeah, I'm looking forward for public discussion moving forward this item.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? All in favor of moving forward, please raise your hands. And it is 1, 2, 3, 6. It is 6-1 with Councilmember Kaiser dissenting.
Please.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to number 4, consideration of request to have self-storage as a conditional use in the commercial heavy zoning.
Councilmember Zapata. So basically, this was a request. Currently, self-storage is allowed in our industrial, so that's not a part of this discussion. It is a conditional use in our SH shop front, and it is a limited use in our CH, commercial heavy. So the request for this one is to make it a conditional use in the CH district.
Floor is open.
Well, similar discussion here. To continue a similar discussion, again, it's not banded, it's conditional use, because banding is prohibited. He is not prohibited, is waiting mayor and council and community input on these self-storage places in the city of Roswell. So, it's the same thing, how much value this add to the community. I know that recently in the city of Sandy Spring, neighborhoods and hundreds of residents have to fight with everything, especially with their time, to make presentations to mayor and council, not to allow self-storage in this neighborhood. So, I don't like to see, having to fight something that is up the hill. I like the community to come and wait in before it's down the hill. So it's the same concept here. It's not banned. It's conditional use, depending of mayor and council and the community agreement.
And something I'd like to repeat from the prior discussion as well, I do support moving this to a conditional use. If this body or the planning commission has recommendations on areas it should be permitted instead of conditional, I will certainly be open-minded to that. And perhaps through the comp plan discussion, there's the opportunity to show and get specific enough where here's all the areas that should be permitted, and perhaps in no other area should it even be conditional. I'm open to that, but I support today as proposed because I do think it's important that we fix this issue and until perhaps having a broader solution.
Ms. Dybel, is this the last place where self-storage is, aside from
Aside from industrial,
industrial?
yes. It's the only, there are 3 places that's considered limited, that's commercial heavy, and the 2 industrial zonings, industrial flex and industrial light. And it's a conditional use in the SH zoning. Those are the only 4 classifications.
So, maybe what we ought to do on this one is have some consistency. Maybe it should be conditional everywhere,
I agree with that.
so that we don't have the same kind of awful problem that we have back here that's happened because we didn't close the barn door till after the horses got out. So, again, I'm looking for certainty, and if certainty means it's conditional everywhere, I think that's better.
I think this is a classic case with self-storage where instead of banning it, we need to make it more attractive to the market to build something else there so that it's more attractive and feasible to do other options than a self-storage. I think there are a couple of places where people have gone with self-storage because it seemed like the path of least resistance. And I'm not sure that's the message we want to be sending either.
So again, it's not banned, for the record, it's conditional use. It's 2 different things. If not, it will be banned, and conditional use doesn't exist. So it does exist, and it's 2 different things we have to understand. First. Second, I think that light industrial and heavy industrial is mainly warehousing, and this is a perfect example of warehousing. It's in a small scale warehousing, not in a big scale warehousing or mid-sized warehousing. So I think that I would prefer light industrial and heavy industrial, leave it as a permitted use because it's storage and it's warehousing in a smaller scale, but it's warehousing after all.
I agree with Councilman Tizer in this case. If we're going to do this, I think if we're going to go down this road of making everything conditional, I think we've got to start figuring out health, safety, and welfare issues in every zoning area, and make sure that we have a strong case from the city. So I would do this as all areas.
Ms. Dybel? Walking distance to here, I know we have light industrial. Do we have heavy industrial here too?
No, the only walking distance from here is industrial flex, which is the lighter.
So, because that's something I certainly feel should be conditional use. And if this body prefers, my preference would be to try to have a unanimous vote. So I think we should discuss all this. But again, without a doubt, I think industrial flex should be included. And I think for heavy, I think that should be discussed. And I'm kind of on the fence.
Well, I agree with Councilmember Tizer that it should be conditional in all areas. And the reason why I say that is, we all love to talk about market forces, but storage units are just like apartments right now. They're a hot commodity, lenders are giving money for them, and the reason why is we've all got too much stuff. And we have storage units. We need storage units because we've got stuff that we have to store. So I would agree to make it conditional throughout because, and especially the industrial flex, I mean, this was our industrial area. We are in our old industrial area when Roswell was, a child. And now we're transforming that as being basically gentrified out of an industrial area into more housing and other uses. So I think that there are places that in industrial, I'll give you another example over there on Sun Valley. I'm not sure what the zoning is around there, but I know we've got a lot of pretty intense commercial uses, and I believe we've got some pretty intense industrial uses there. Now, is it appropriate if, for example, there's an industrial piece of property that's right next to those townhouses that got plunked down in the middle of where they shouldn't have been, but do we want to build a storage unit right next door to those now? So I think they should all be conditional.
And I want to actually give this council some credit as well, actually. It was some great consensus back in 2018 we did in the city of Roswell greatly improve how our, the rules around how our storage units are built. That being said, I think it is still valuable to put it as conditional use, but we did make some good improvements on the rules around storage back in 2018, which I definitely appreciated the unanimous support and working together.
So I would like to move forward, item number 4. Yes, it's a motion.
And-
Motion to move forward for initiation.
And conditional for all zonings, or just conditional for
It
commercial?
could be conditional for all. We can bring this to mayor and council discussion and have more information and more, we can discuss. I mean, either one, I'm flexible. So if the council
Just make a
decide to.
motion, please.
Excuse me, can I
If you
finish?
could just make a motion.
If you can let me finish, thanks. So, so if, if this council feels better that it's for all, that's fine with me, and then we can review this if it's needed during the mayor and council meeting. So with all then, let's do with all.
I got it.
Thanks.
Is he good, Olivia? Is there a second? I'm sorry, I didn't pick that up. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. It's unanimous, thank you. Item number 5, consideration of requiring conditional use for car wash uses within the commercial zoning classifications. Ms. Dybel.
Replay the audio for the last.
I don't want to sound like a broken record here again, but
If you
I was,
like, before you start, car washes are currently as a conditional use in NX, a limited use in CX, SH, CC, CH, and also considered a limited use in our two industrial classifications, IX and IL.
so yeah, I think it was a great idea from Jackie to have 3 different items. We might repeat ourselves, but I think it's more clear going one by one, and I like this approach. So here again, the same thing, similar same to the experience with the fuel pumps. We have on East Roswell on Holcomb Bridge, all of a sudden coming out a car wash out of nowhere in the middle of a recently renovated, beautiful strip mall. And again, the community was asking how this happened, how mayor and council approved this. And I have to explain to everybody, like, wait a minute, unfortunately, this didn't have to go through mayor and council and citizens and community input. So the same philosophy, to let the community and the citizens to weigh in, and obviously mayor and council to weigh in is what I'm proposing, to have a conditional use, not to ban car wash uses, not to ban them, but to make it conditional.
I've just got 2 questions. One is, are you just talking about standalone car washes, or are you including ones that are attached to a gas station?
No, okay, stand alone.
Okay.
So sorry, yes, stand alone.
And then, Jackie, refresh my memory, aren't car washes not allowed in Parkway Village, period?
So, car wash, not allowed in Parkway Village.
So in Parkway Village, you can't have a standalone and you can't have one attached to a gas station?
So, let me check the accessories on that.
And unless it's changed,
Correct.
that's how it used to be.
Correct, it's not allowed as an accessory use either in Parkway Village.
Well, I think it's
I'm
definitely.
just throwing that out there.
I understand. No, it's great. I mean, it's something to be considered. And definitely, again, if it's there, it's granted. So, well, it's something to discuss. Yeah, if it's allowed with the gas station as well, that to have a car wash, I don't see a problem to have a gas station already with a car wash. But it's something that we can discuss and agree on a mayor and council meeting. But it's a good point. But no, in this case, the intent was just for standalone car washes.
Jackie, are they already, I know we have in some mixed-use developments have excluded them from a mixed-use project. So are they already excluded generally from a mixed use, or is that something that we?
No, those are the
have as
mixed-use
commercial,
zoning
so-
classifications.
Right,
So,
You can do them in those zonings. I guess if you wanted to include them with a mixed-use project, you could, because they're considered a limited use. And their limitations, and I'll read those for you since we're looking at that, 965. So you can see what the limitations are on the car wash. Okay, car wash. Where it's considered a limited use, it has 3 items. No car wash is permitted, there you go, sorry, Olivia. No car wash is permitted within 50 feet of a ground floor residential use, measured from the residential lot line to the lot line of the car wash facility. A type A or B buffer must be established along all lot lines abutting a ground floor residential use. And letter C, when abutting a ground floor residential use, the car wash facility cannot operate before 6 a.m. or after 11 p.m. Those are the 3 limitations that we have on car washes.
So if there's no more discussion, motion to move forward.
Motion before for initiation by Councilman Zapata, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wiltie. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. It passes 6, any opposed? One opposed, it passes 6 to 1. Councilmember Kaiser opposing. Moving on to item number 6, discussion and review health spa uses. Ms. Dybel.
All right, so this item, I think, is going to be just a review, because after numerous discussions with Councilmember Zapata and legal, we're trying to determine if it was therapeutic massage or if it was health spas. So what I think came out of this was that the current use under commercial uses where it says gym, health spa, and yoga studio, because they're all together. A massage, and this is going to be where legal steps in, has specific state requirements, state licensing requirements, whereas a health spa is different. You want to maybe give an explanation? Because I think we had a lot of conversations with David last week or the week before, but if you could kind of help.
Well, you can go with what David told you, because, I mean, essentially, the massage, spa, and all is where the abuses come through, and the state has regulations about that we've adopted. And then there are times within business registration where somebody wants to open a health spa, but they offer some services that the state considers massage, and we have to kind of separate and tell them what they can and can't do. And as far as the massage, the abuses that go on, the police are always checking on those and going through, and it's very difficult to prosecute those things because they change the business name and go through, and you got to start all over again and catch them and do things. I don't know, I haven't talked to Chief Conroy recently, but my sense is we don't have the problems we had 10 years ago. When I first arrived, it was a big problem, and we were doing several prosecutions, and it seems to have died off. Sort of like the questionable, if I've forgotten the names, or where they sold sex toys and films and books. Because of the internet, that's gone away. That's just not an issue anymore.
So, well, how to put it? How to put it elegantly? I mean, those spas, unfortunately, some of them are not legitimate spas. They promote, human trafficking. They promote definitely more work from our police department. We have to use more resources to shut them down and chase them. And like our legal department just said, they changed the name over and over. They seem to make it look like it changed the ownership. So definitely it's not good for the neighborhoods. Definitely it's not good for the neighborhoods. And I have a few residents who approach me and say, how can we take care of this and prevent to happen more and more of this? So this is what is coming. I mean, unfortunately, we're like talking, how can we isolate this kind of unscrupulous spas. So, because we all know that this totally help for human trafficking. So some of them open until midnight. So, it's a problem. So we're trying to see how can we, throughout the process, to discourage this kind of dubious spas to come to the city. So obviously, the more hoops you put in the process for them, the more discouraged they become to open, and they will go maybe to another city where it's less complex to open one of those. So we were debating how can we tackle this issue. And separate and isolate from the legitimate businesses that we want to protect the reputation of these industry and businesses and just isolate those bad apples from the industry.
Floor is open. Any further question or discussion? Are we looking for initiation on something, or is this just discussion?
So I don't know if do we feel with the staff that we are ready to isolate this and throughout the process, or?
I don't think so. I think we need to talk with Chief Conroy and get recommendations from police about any specific enforcement tools that they're lacking that we might be able to put in.
Well, I think there's two different approaches I think I'm hearing. I'm hearing one approach is assist the police in enforcement, and that's one possibility this council could decide to do. A completely separate one I'm hearing is potentially, is there a way to impact through this through zoning, through business license, through conditions, through license requirements, et cetera? Am I understanding that correctly?
If I may, the business license folks that deal with all the business are very, very thorough when these types of businesses come forward for their license. It's not simply that you apply and they say, "Oh, okay, we're going to approve it." They coordinate with legal. They coordinate with the officers that handle these types of uses over in PD, and I don't know to what extent we could do to isolate or to end up penalizing the legitimate ones at to try and get the bad guys. They're very thorough when it comes to identifying something that looks suspicious. I mean, the ones that are usually the suspicious one are the ones that are usually they're in an office park. Some of the office condos, their name continuously change. It's one name, but then the license and then the person's. So the staff that handles that has a pretty good system of coordinating and doing the checks and balance.
I have full confidence our staff is doing everything in their power and doing a great job. I think really the responsibility lies with council to make sure, are we empowering them with our code, with our license requirements? And I think what I was hearing is perhaps there are benefits to separating and potentially having different license or state requirements. And maybe there are good ways to do that, maybe there aren't, but I think that sounds like one possibility. Another thing perhaps to consider is how perhaps if we should consider if it is separated, and then if it is separated, perhaps regulating the hours, I think could be a potential tool to consider. But I just want to make sure we're talking separate, that staff is not doing a great job with everything in their power. This is just, could we do a better job with our ordinances and our requirements to help really protect the community?
Yeah, can we give it more tools to staff throughout the process to identify or discourage? Because they will get discouraged, some of them, when they see that they have to go through different steps. So there's something that I would like to bring back to committee meeting, if you all agree. But I think we need to continue this discussion because there might be a way to prevent and discourage these bad past businesses to happen in the city. So, and also, like I said, that is one of the main issues of human trafficking is this kind of a spot. So I think that if we can find a way legally and for staff to discourage this and prevent this, that would be a great initiative for the community.
Yeah.
Any further questions or discussion?
I'll check.
Mayor?
Yeah, number one, I'd like to have the conversation with the police department as well, so when we talk about this again, I'd like them at the table. But then also, I was just talking to Bob, it seems like Johns Creek did something to regulate these in the last couple of years. So I would suggest that we look at neighboring communities and see what their codes say.
Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? Okay, thank you, Jackie and Alice. Moving on to transportation, item number 7, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to authorize execution of an intergovernmental agreement with Fulton County to resurface roads in the Martin's Landing subdivision.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So first item we got is, like Gary mentioned, an IGA with Fulton County. So what we have is, so Fulton County needs to do a project in a small subdivision within Martin Landings. It's called Lakeview Ridge. They have a very old water line that sits under the roadway along the full length of all roads in the subdivision. So if they do their project, it's going to affect about 64% of all the pavement within that subdivision. And we have a list of all the roads shown here. So the estimated cost to repair or resurface that 64% of the pavement is $241,178. So generally, if it's a smaller utility project, what we would do is that the utility company or Fulton County, if they're doing their water line project, they would just resurface a certain number of feet of length and a certain number of feet of width. But in this case, since it's like all roads in a subdivision and they're going to basically take out 64% of all the pavement within the subdivision. So we worked with them. We've been working with the county for several months now on this one. We talked about several different options. It's a very tight right-of-way. There is no right-of-way beyond the roadway. Generally, preferably, we would want to have these water lines not under the roadway, but still in the public right-of-way. So that was not an option. We also requested them just to do the full width resurfacing, but they said no, they didn't have to say yes, so we tried. So the agreement we came up with the county, that's before you for a formal approval, is for the city to take the money from the Fulton County, an estimated cost of 64% of the pavement, and then do the resurfacing as part of our regular annual resurfacing program. So here's a map of the subdivision. You could see it's pretty much all streets in the subdivision. So the IGA states that the city would receive the amount equivalent to the 64% of the pavement, and then the city will complete the work as part of our resurfacing program. So what they would do is county would do their work and they would just cap and patch. It's gonna be safe, of course, for all travel by the citizens, but it's just not gonna look very good while it's in that condition. But soon after the county finishes their work, if they can finish it while we still have our resurfacing contractor this year, they would do the work immediately after that. If not, it could be next year. There is going to be several months of delay if the county is a little late finishing the project. So if as of the current condition of the road, it's going to be eligible for resurfacing in the next 3 to 5 years. But when the county performs their work, if we evaluate it next year, it's going to be due for resurfacing next year anyway. So their share is 64%. City would pay the other 36%. So staff is recommending approval of the IGA in order for county to proceed with the work and for the city to resurface later.
Floor is open.
So I think absolutely the right way to go about this, and unless there's further discussion, I'd move to approve.
I missed that last part. Was that motion to approve?
Second.
Motion approved by Councilmember Tizer, second by Councilmember Judy. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous, thank you. Item number 8, and I'll just, for the record, Councilmember Hall is out of the room, so that was, okay, just note that. We're requesting a deferral for item number 8. We're just not ready on that one.
Yeah, we were just waiting for some supporting documents on that, and we haven't received. It's not a very urgent item, so we could come back hopefully next month, if not then the following month.
Okay, moving on to item number 9, discussion of lighting along the Rucker Road T-Splosh project. Mohammed.
So here's a quick map of the project. If you remember, City of Alpharetta was constructing or upgrading Rucker Road for some operational improvements, putting trails on both sides. So we worked with Alpharetta. We have an IGA with them for their contractor to upgrade our section with the same cross section. It's still doing turn lanes where needed and doing a multi-use trail on both sides. The only piece that is missing in our project is the pedestrian lights. The project construction is at about 35%. And it's a T-Splosh money that we are using. This was our first T-Splosh construction project. So pedestrian lights are not included, and just generally we don't do pedestrian lights. Like the Hardscrabble Green Loop project, we finished it. It's beautiful. It's good, but there is no pedestrian lights. Only where street lights were required, right? Like by the roundabout at Hardscrabble and Chafin, that's where we installed, our project installed. But other than that, we didn't. So generally, we don't do pedestrian lights. And also, if you remember, we have the street light pause in place since 2015 just to keep our power bill low. So based on those reasons, the pedestrian lights were not included in the design of this Rucker Road project. So since Alpharetta has installed a whole bunch of pedestrian lights, it looks really good, but it comes at a cost. So our residents have seen them, and they're asking if the lights are going to be in our section, and our answer so far has been no. So we received several inquiries from several residents, and a couple of you asked as well. So we just gathered some basic information to get guidance from you. So here is what the section in Alpharetta is looking, still under construction. The trail on both sides, that looks great. We'll have that. But it's these pedestrian lights that we are missing in the design. So so just to give you some idea, if you look at the Alpharetta lights, they're a little too dense, and they actually received some complaints as well that this is like too much and too bright. Everybody loves them, but this is a little too much. So
Give us half their lights.
yeah, seriously. We can go at night and pull every third light. So
Or you could just take them, that works.
yeah. Or maybe we'll do it the right way with this item. So just to give you a comparison, on State Road 120, the river to the square multi-use trail that we completed several years ago, the spacing was 100 feet. State Road 9 streetscape, it's 110 feet spacing. Westbound through lane on Holcomb Bridge, 75 feet spacing. These are average spacings, by the way. And the Rucker Road Alpharetta portion is 85 feet spacing. That looks a little too dense. So, and also if you look at their post and the fixture is a little different. That's Alpharetta standard. If we were to do these lights, this is our standard. So if you want to do the lights, I guess we would want to follow our own standard. So this is what the lights could look like. So just to give you some cost comparisons. So and again, these are estimated costs from the contract that Alpharetta is using. So if you look at the option 1A, if we use Alpharetta's poles, those fixtures exactly looking them at the exact spacing, the total cost for the city would be $330,000 for the Rucker Road portion in the city. If we do their spacing, but our standard pole, it's going to be $297,000. And then again, I got a couple different options with more spacing. Of course, more spacing means less fixtures and less money. So you can see those numbers. Option 3B, if you wanted to consider, maybe that's a good one to consider. So Roswell standard at 125 feet spacing, the total cost could be $220,000. And then the last option is if we didn't do the fixtures and poles at all, we just did the underground work, the conduit, the foundation, the cost of that is $110,000. So that's all the information we got without knowing what direction would you want to go to. So if you look at so of course there is some unallocated money in the T-Splost pot. Of course, it's a big pot, but we have a lot of projects on the list and a lot of needs we'd be working over the next few years. So yes, there is money available as of today, but we have a lot of projects on the list as well.
Mohammed, on that, if you can go back to that picture, what's the length, the linear length that we would have to cover?
Oh, so our portion is like maybe half a mile, and Alfreda's length is like 3 miles. So their total bill for the pedestrian lights is many, many times more. I heard the number about $1.5 million, just because their length is just so much, and the spacing, of course, that matters.
Mohammed, can you give us any indication, because this isn't the first request we've had for streetlights. We've had them in neighborhoods, we've had them in other corridors. So do we have, because I know we've got the pause, but do we have any list of people that have requested them over the last couple of years?
So I can't recall a request for like a corridor.
Okay.
But we get requests from within the subdivision that this area is dark or that area is dark. So requests for 1 or 2 streetlights is pretty common, but I can't recall a request for a full corridor. Like Hardscrabble Green Loop, yeah, we didn't have any requests on that one.
So I spoke to several residents, as I know most of us have. It's really dark up there. I guess I don't have a real problem with option 3B as you recommended. I think it would create, some amount of light. I think as we're installing LED across the city, there's savings coming. Maybe we can use that savings theoretically to create more light. So I don't have a problem with something like option 3B.
Yes.
I do think the way Alpharetta's done it, they're way too close.
So on the,
It looks awful.
Yes, I agree. But on the savings, I would want to clarify that, so we have, you have approved one project that's Highway 9, some additional lighting on Highway 9 using that savings, and just last month's committee, maybe you meant future savings.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting where you should get the money from. I'm just overall for the city.
Okay.
We do have some savings. I would imagine these would be LED also.
Yes.
So any idea of what the annual cost might be?
Not off the top of my head, but we can get that
Big number,
information.
small number?
I mean, it's just, how many more lights is this, Greg? If we did 3B.
3B would be 40 lights, 20 on each side, approximately.
Okay.
So Scott, off the top of your head, the power bill and so we would do the maintenance, but 800 a month for the power bill.
Thank you.
Rough number.
So I also think of the options, I like 3B. I do want to get some confirmation from you for you to go back, once you have time in your office on the mayor's question on requests, because I'd consider Rucker Road a corridor. Would you consider it that way, given the fact that it connects different neighborhoods to a commercial area?
Yes, it is, yes.
And so I would want to know, have there been other corridors, either entire corridors or just certain parts of corridors, if there have been requests on lights? But given that a corridor connects multiple neighborhoods, I do see that as as in connecting to commercial areas. I do see that's something I'd like us to look at.
Okay.
And definitely, again, yeah, I agree that I think Alpharetta is way too close together. And also, I do think it makes sense to stick with Roswell, standard poles. Not standard, you know what I mean, but just the typical nice looking Roswell poles.
So your recommendation of 125 feet is something quite standard and will provide enough lighting.
Oh, yeah, definitely looking at the Alpharetta's piece. And I just want to clarify, there's really no staff recommendation because we generally don't do this. So I really don't have a recommendation based on the input you have received from the community. If this is what you want to do, these are all the options. So, but I can tell you that the 125 spacing, especially think about we're doing them on both sides, and we're going to stagger them, right? So that's why I think the 125 feet still gives a reasonable coverage. And there may be some overhead street lights as well. We asked a question from the power company. I'm not sure if we have the answer or not, but there's going to be at least maybe a few overhead street lights as well.
Quick Google search says that is within a pretty standard 110 to 130 recommendation.
Yeah.
So I think
Yes.
that's a good thing. And I would support 3B as well.
So what are you looking for?
So, well, we just needed the guidance. So if it looks like the city wants to do this, so we'll go back and get a quote from the contractor and give you a couple of options on how to fund this. We'll talk to finance and look for some money to fund option 3B with the 125 feet spacing.
So I think that sounds like that's the guidance from everyone. I just want to remind you again, it's going to be important for you to get that confirmation that there have not been other corridors.
Yes, I will do that.
Whether the entire corridor or partial.
Okay, I will do that.
So you're good with just direction, you need to vote, so you get back to committee with a proposal?
Yes, because it looks like there is still going to be, we still need a confirmed number from the contractor, so we would like to come back to the committee.
Sounds good. Any further questions or discussion? Thanks, Bob. Moving on to other items. Consideration to hire an independent firm and/or person to conduct an impact analysis of the Unified Development Code amendments. Councilmember Chu.
So this came out of a conversation I had with ComDev, trying to figure out as we go through this process of adding all of these UDC amendments, what is the impact, what is the financial impact to our tax base, to the area, et cetera, of these amendments? And so we can make better decisions, more informed decisions based upon the economics of what we're doing. And, for me, I think the more information, the better. I was told that there's people that do this for a living. When we were talking about how to measure this, how do we look at, making right decisions, wrong decisions in different areas, and using that data to do this. And I believe actuary is probably not the correct term because that's insurance, but it's kind of an actuarial study using math to show, all right, you remove this use from this percentage of your city, here's your tax impact. Here's the impact to that area should you remove this use. It's all based upon math, really. And so it's really factual and can give us some kind of guidelines and give citizens a screenshot of really what we're looking at when it comes to these amendments. And, I think it will help us make more informed decisions and, possibly change folks' minds when it comes to looking at economic impacts. And I think this is just a piece of it. There's economic impacts, there's citizen input, there's, legal. This is just one piece of the puzzle. So this isn't the end all be all, but I think it's important that we have this piece of the puzzle. If it's A, not too expensive, B, it's easy, and 3, we're getting the right information out. So for me, I wanted to explore this option. Gary, I know I talked to you about this a bit, or Alice, whoever. Could you kind of help me on what this might look like?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. I think it's going to take, all of these amendments that we're proposing and give us an idea from a scientific data, mathematical standpoint on what impact this is going to have on our tax base, short-term, midterm, long-term. I don't think anybody knows offhand right now what impacts these are going to have. So I think, for me, the council needs to understand what impact any decision you guys make. And we do that at some level with the staff. But for something like this, I think we need to bring in someone from the outside, take a look at this from a holistic standpoint, and do some projections. Let us know exactly what this is going to do to us.
So we have, as you know, a number of different amendments. Which ones specifically Mr. Judy, are you recommending we look at?
I would think that would be up to the actuary. I'm just use that term as when they come with a scope of what they can measure. I don't know what they can measure and what they can't. And I think that this is something that when we go out and look at what they can measure and what they can't, if they come back and we see the data is useless to us, then we obviously don't move forward. But I think it's important to move forward to see what data we could get. And so that's the reason I brought it today, to try to move forward so we can get some more information on what this might look like for us.
I guess my concern is, I think certainly a consultant, if we're offering to pay them, they're going to be able to say they'll find data on everything. However, I think there's some things here where I really question the intent, and is there a better way to accomplish a goal? And what I mean by that is, technically, if I'm hearing correctly, it's saying someone like an actuary could come up and say that actually, if you allow more apartments and just encourage more apartments, then that's going to improve the tax base by this. I think that's what I'm hearing. But I think the issue I have is, for example, one of the text amendments is to level the playing field between the east side and the west side. So it's the fact that the west side, we have Parkway Village zoning, which doesn't allow the stacked flats. It has to be a mixed use. We're looking to do that on the east side. And theoretically, we could have a consultant come in and say, actually, if you're allowing or encouraging stacked flats on the east side, that's going to help, bring in more city taxes. I think that's too narrowly focused. What I'd like to instead do it. So I love the idea of bringing in a consultant. I love the idea of doing a bigger overhaul, but I think it's too tactical in the weeds to have a consultant looking at just individual loopholes that we're trying to fix. Instead, I think what we should do is we should come up with what is our vision, and then let's hire a consultant to give their recommendations through math and tax type thoughts, long term, as well as, traffic, as well as citizen, input, all those different aspects. But because there, I think then we actually have a playbook. So right now, I think we have a bunch of things that are loopholes that we want to fix. And long term, I think if instead we're saying, what, that actually we should stop, bringing on so many more apartments, and we want to actually instead create destinations and bring in jobs and these different aspects, and we give that big picture to a consultant. I think that, and our code, and then I think they can kind of come back with us with some big picture guidance instead of just saying, hey, we have some loopholes we're looking to fix, and hiring them for that instead of a big picture. That's kind of my thought process.
I guess my vision or my goal with these amendments are to encourage high-quality development and redevelopment in certain areas. And I just want to make sure that what we're bringing forward is actually going to help us accomplish that. I haven't seen any proof with what's been proposed that would confirm that. And I think having an outside professional planner take a look at these, they can tell us, yeah, this is perfect, this will work, or maybe you need to tweak this a little bit here and there. But I definitely think that we owe it to our citizens and the overall vision of the city to have these things looked at.
And, well, are you saying look at the code, or just looking at these loopholes that we're looking to fix? Which thing? I mean, like the
Well,
big picture.
particularly the UDC amendments that are coming forward now, because they do affect the big picture.
Well,
Absolutely.
And I'd say they're similar to Mr. Zapata, bringing up real examples for, when he brought up the gas station, brought up the car wash, et cetera. These are all addressing real examples. The fact that we have a code that says an intent, and that intent is not being followed. For example, one of the aspects is commercial mixed use should be primarily retail and commercial. So it says that clearly in the intent. It's something we've seen a lot from the community where they want to see more of that, but instead what we've seen is approved are things that are 96% residential. So this is addressing that. What we've seen is our code says that residential needs to be integrated with the commercial/retail, and that's something we saw a ton from residents. Yet, what we saw approved was apartments that are not vertically integrated, and in fact, even having separate parcels. So these are things that are aligning the actual rules in our code with the stated voted upon intent in our code, and they are things that we've heard from community feedback as issues and lost opportunities. So I see these as stopping the bleeding, perhaps even just temporary fixes. But again, I want to bring in a consultant. I want to look at the big picture. But just to hire someone to look at each of these loopholes and see, well, would the city make more tax dollars if there was more flexibility on apartments and were more apartments? That I just see as a little too in the weeds.
Yeah. I don't see it as being at the city getting more tax dollars. It is making sure that we achieve our redevelopment vision that works and meets the vision.
That's different from what I heard proposed, because that actually is, I think, something different. What I heard proposed was that we have someone come in and they look at the math on seeing how would this long-term affect our tax base if we're making it tougher for more apartments to go everywhere. And whereas in what you're describing is more of how do we make sure the code is accomplishing our goals, which is actually where I'm aligned. I want to see that. I think for us to do that, we have to publicly state what our goal is to the consultant. Because if our public goal is we want more apartments in the city of Roswell, we want them to go everywhere, we want them to take up every square foot, then these amendments are probably not a good idea. But I think if we're open and we all agree we want more destinations, we want more jobs, we want a mix of uses, and then we tell that to a consultant, that's where I think they can actually have some valuable input that perhaps we haven't thought of yet.
Well, I think those two things are very interrelated, and I think that's where taking these specific steps that have been brought forward, which can help us to put that vision forward, so that we're not having to redo it over and over again. So I think it's really hard to separate the two.
So analysis is always good, data is always great, but you have to understand the data you have and the data you don't have. The data you have on the past, the data you may have in the future. And all this started everything with the vision of the community. So once you have the vision of the community, where you want to go, then you can analyze, okay, based on this vision, this is where we're going. And that is the pro and cons. And then you move on. So you need to have the vision of the community, and this, I understand, will come through the comprehensive plan and through the strategic plan will come the vision. Hopefully will be pure vision of the community, won't be filtered, will be also hopefully raw vision of the community, so we can all make our own interpretation of that. Second, we do understand and we do have data that our tax base is 70% residential, 30% commercial, which means, quick and dirty reading of this data is that we need to develop more commercial, being office, being hotels, and being destination commercial places. So this is how you balance your tax base. So I think that it's a great idea to have an impact analysis of a consultant, an independent firm or a person. But I think that will be as a result of the vision of the citizens of Roswell. And this will come again, I repeat, is coming through the comp plan and through the strategic plan. And then you can quantify numbers there. But if you want to just set I don't know. I don't know how you're going to see the data because, again, are you going to look back the data from the past? Are you going to look the data for the future? And the future depends on the vision of the citizens, not depends on the vision of the developer. So then you have the vision of the city, and then you go and recruit these certain projects and engage these kind of developers to fulfill the vision and needs of the citizens, the community, and the people of Roswell.
Again, I think if we have an idea of what we want, which is more commercial development, what can we do to incent that and attract that, rather than the things that we're saying what we don't want. That's what we're bringing forward. But how can we tweak those things so that we get the kind of quality development that we
I agree with, I want what you want. So actually, what you just said, I actually support. So if this is what we're going to document and we're going to put out there, that is, if you made that motion, I would second it, but that's very different than what I heard earlier.
Let me just kind of piggyback off of what Councilmember Zapata said. We've got a comp plan that's going on. We've got a strategic plan that's going on. We will be master planning the northwest quadrant of Holcomb Bridge and 400. We've got a road coming through there which is going to change what we can do with that zoning. And I really feel as though, and this is just my opinion, I really feel as though when we incentivize the northwest quadrant, that is going to give us an economic boost as far as our commercial office, as well as in order to incentivize the apartments, we're going to have to give the density bonuses. So I think we're looking at a lot of different things, and just looking at loopholes, I can't support, because we've got to look at the big picture. And the big picture is we're master planning the northwest quadrant, we've got a comp plan, a strategic plan, and I want all of that factored in together, not just looking at loopholes.
So I'm kind of in the middle on this. I need some data, some information as part of that whole process. Councilmember Zapata used a set of numbers. 70% of our tax base is commercial and 30%, or is residential, and 30% is commercial. And that's true if you're only talking about one part of our tax base. But our tax base is based up on at least four parts. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing, and I think we need the data to understand it. So the second largest part of our tax base is sales tax, okay? Followed by liquor taxes and all the business taxes, liquor taxes on down the line. On the chart we saw, and it was either page 11 or page 13 last week. So we say we want more office, okay? Because we just say we want more office. I'd like to understand the economics of that decision, because maybe we really want more retail. I don't know the answer to that, but if we're going to talk about tax base, tell me which things create the better piece of it. And there's tangents to that, right? Because if you've got jobs where people live here, right, it's got some tail. That's the actuarial part of the whole thing. And so it's hard for me to say the vision of the community is whatever. I'm going to use office as the example, okay, if there's no economics tied to it. Because there's other pieces to it, of course. There's, roadways and traffic and all those sorts of things. And it's great to ask people, would you all like a Porsche, right, without telling them the cost of that Porsche, right? Because then people will say, I don't really need something that fancy, right? And so for me, understanding the impact of the decisions that we think are coming, we have a pretty good idea of what 2,000 residents have kind of told us. And I think putting some numbers to that gets to the same place. It says, if you make this decision versus this decision, here's the gap.
So
And then if you tell people that information, you may change their decision process, right? I don't know where it goes because I'm assuming, right, that business is better than other thing, or office is better than other things, but I don't know that.
But I think the problem is, I think I think you made a lot of great points, a lot of which I agree. So I think actually we agree on a number of things, but with a different, have a different outcome from it. I think, what you've described on kind of judging which is better is purely from a tax revenue standpoint. And because you're right, based on, we have property tax, which is obviously, very large, and that's where there's that skew discussed, and we have sales tax next. And so from that logic, perhaps we want more sales, so more retail, things like that. But for me, I'm looking at, in my view, I feel it's more holistic, which is I'm looking at quality of life. One part of quality of life and one benefit is the more tax revenue we have from businesses, then that's more services we can get. That's an incredible benefit that I care about and I take seriously. At the same time, I think traffic is a horrible, really attack on our quality of life. And I think that's something that needs to be factored in, which isn't necessarily factored in with just purely the tax data. And that's where what it comes down to is, I think I have an issue with, there's many different factors that go in my belief, into quality of life. And the problem with the proposal I'm hearing of just let's look at potentially, the impact on tax base if we make it, if we change the way apartments are developed, et cetera. And the problem is, I think that's skewing it, where that's not looking enough at quality of life around traffic, around just destinations, on those different aspects. And what I see as really a big issue with that is, my expectation would be actually, a brand new apartment building is going to be a big increase to tax base. But I strongly believe, I'm not hearing the community saying, this is great, we need more large apartment buildings because it's a great tax base. We already have examples, we already have apartment buildings, we can show what their taxes is. What this sounds to me like potential, and I don't think this is the intent, but it sounds to me like there's the potential that if this shows that actually by making it easier for many more apartments, we're going to get a lot more tax dollars in the future. That's a great argument for apartments. That argument for apartments should come from developers. They have that ability to come, they say, hey, you should approve the apartments, here's why, and perhaps get a variance, because the majority of the things proposed, developers still have the right to request. It's just not going to be the standard the way it's been the last 2 years.
I think you heard me use the example of office, not apartment. The running around number that I'm hearing is that's 3 times the traffic of residential. I'd like to know if those things are true. Because here's the thing, I may want to put up with some more traffic if that traffic is increasing the business of my day business, right? And I think we owe it to our citizens to let them know the impacts of decisions. It's just one leg of a decision process that I think makes sense. Now, whether you do it this way or a different way, I think staff could come up with a concept for us to look at a later, at a next meeting and say, hey, here's what other places have done.
So,
I don't know what those are.
So we're getting into completely off where I wanted this to go. I wanted a holistic, Gary said, holistic view of what does this do if we put this here? What does it do if we ban apartments? What if we do this? And that was what I was looking for, is somebody to come in and put numbers to decisions that were being made, not only decisions that are being made now, but hey, look, here's what you might want to look at in this area. Here's something that's done well in this area, because they take stuff from all kinds of different areas. And now I'm really confused because I'm hearing we need to wait for the comp plan and the strategic plan to finish, when earlier this meeting I heard we don't need to wait on we don't need to wait on this, we need to do this now. So we're 31 days into a moratorium. We have no new data on what we need to do.
We have a lot of loopholes.
Okay, Mike, I understand you think they're loopholes, and some people think they're loopholes, and this, that, and the other. Great. What I'm trying to say is we deserve to give people data on what we are doing, and this is just one piece of the puzzle. And I brought this forward because I want to know, what is the scope somebody like this can do to provide us data to make informed decisions? That's all. And if we can get that from staff, and we can look at that and say, all right, this is going to help us move through this process. It will help us move through the comp plan. If people knew numbers based upon different uses and this, that, and the other, and the comp plan committee could use those as they go forward, I think that's a very important thing. And it's not, we can't be afraid to have data that might go against something we believe. And so we have to get data sometimes that might go a different direction. So we can't be afraid of that. So I don't understand why in the world anybody would be against getting more information on a holistic level of what we can do to increase the ability for Roswell to succeed in zoning, business, quality of life, etc. There's a bunch of levels here, but if we're able to do this, it provides us a background and we're not just pulling things with no information.
Well,
So-
let me just say this, and I apologize, I've got a meeting at 10. But I don't want to lose the vision of the citizens of Roswell. That's what I don't want to lose. And I don't want to create a tool that I have to go to the folks on the east side and say, guess what? You don't want apartments, but we've got data. We've got data right here. And that's what you need are more apartments. I think that everything should be weighted equally. The vision needs to be considered. And
Right.
that's why I keep going to the comp plan and the strategic plan, because that is the vision. And it's our job as elected officials to execute vision as well as where are we going with the city? Of course, none of us want to see the city in dire straits in 10 years. We don't want that. But what our citizens and our business owners want in the city of Roswell is very, very important, and that can't be overshadowed with a tool.
Well, should people have information to make that decision?
I don't have any problem with that.
Okay, and that's all I'm asking for.
But you were talking about loopholes and...
No, I didn't say a word about
No,
loopholes.
the amendments. So my issue is I want the big picture. I think we're actually in agreement, the big picture. It's just what I'm hearing actually potentially get passed is a consultant's purely going to look at these loopholes and whether or not they should be closed. I think
That's a part of it.
there needs to be the big discussion.
That's a
Right,
part of it.
right.
So it
That's
sounded-
that's
it sounded like
definitely,
that
I
was
said at the beginning, that's a part of the holistic view of what's going on and what needs, and if those definitely need to be looked at, because that's going to be policy of the city, and we need to know what that does. But they also need to look at the whole picture. And information is king for people to make informed decisions. They can't just have one side of the story. And so that's what I want to do, is make sure everybody has the full realm of information move forward, including us, the comp plan, strategic plan, everybody. And I don't understand why that would be a problem.
Again, I think the vision of the citizens of Roswell, I don't think anyone's vision is empty shopping centers or underdeveloped properties or properties that need to be redeveloped. I think that we need the market information and the data to make good decisions, and I think that the citizens need that information. I would support for the next meeting having staff come back with their recommendation on what kind of study and evaluation needs to be done of the upcoming UDC text amendments, since they are coming in within the next 60 days. I think we need that data
So,
immediately.
Here's my concern. There's so many different priorities and so many different things this council and staff need to do. And basically, my concern there is if we want this council to focus on, hey, what is the potential future tax impact of making it tougher for apartments to be everywhere, and all that, versus if we do that, then what we're not doing is looking at tying the comp plan to citizen goals, to how do we get what we want. We have to choose. We have a scarcity of time. So, Councilmember Willis, that's why I said earlier what you said, I agreed with 100%. We need to say, here's what we want, and go to a consultant and say, how do we get that? I think that ties in with the comp plan. I support that. But then the problem is if we're spending all our time wanting to know what is the tax impact of not making it so easy to have apartments everywhere. I just see that as taking away time from the big picture, which I believe Mayor Henry kind of was talking about as well as you earlier.
Let's just taking apartments completely out of the picture. I mean, we have,
That's
The
all the
issue
amendments are all
is-
on apartments.
the issue is our citizens want things like investments in sidewalks, they want River Park master plan, they want, activity center. And I think we have to consider all these things as a part of the big picture as to how do we execute on a complete vision for the city. It's not just tied to one specific text amendment.
That's my whole point.
We
Let's
gotta
not
look big
focus on
visions, but you're looking, but we are focusing too much on individual items. We're not looking at the big.
We're stopping the bleeding until we can kind of really come up with that holistic.
So, okay. So we know what hotels do for tourism. We know how much tourism bring, and promoting the city through tourism. We know that. And we actually invest a lot of money on the Convention and Visitor Bureau for that. So you have data there. Fine. Then we know that we are 95% occupancy on office space in Roswell. We know that. And we know how much destination retail contribute to the tax base. We know that. And we invest over $500,000 in Roswell Inc., who has this data. So what I see here, maybe you need someone who compile this data, that we don't need to pay an outside, we don't need to use more taxpayers' money to create something that hopefully is useful, but sometime in the past, we have been doing all this study that they're all nice, put on a shelf. So I think that the data is there. For hotels and tourism, we have data, and we have an organization who manage this data. For, like I said again, office and destination retail, we have an organization who manage this data. We know that we have 95% occupancy, so we are reaching to the max. So we have this data. So what maybe you want, I don't know if I'm reading you right or not, you may want someone who compile this data and show the benefits of having this kind of development in the city to the citizens of Roswell, that hopefully will match or know their vision. Maybe the vision is to not have any commercial and then just pure residential and grow the city and maintain the city and the infrastructure with residential tax base. Maybe, I don't know. So what I'm saying here that for the commercial aspect and the tourism aspect, we have a tool. We don't have to go out there again to look for more data that we already have. Maybe need to be compiled, that's fine. But if this is, I don't know, maybe I'm not reading well your proposal here for the impact analysis with maybe I'm not understanding the scope of your intention here for this consultant firm, or person. So I don't know, that is if we're talking about the impact of commercial, office, hotels, tourism, we have organization who can provide this data right now. And I hope so. Right?
I'd like to make a motion that we ask staff to come back with a recommendation for evaluation of the proposed UDC text amendments.
So you're going to do that instead of the big picture of what do we want and how do we get it?
Well, I think we're working on that with the comp plan and a UDC revision. I think we have to make some decisions in a very short term on these text amendments. And I think we need the data.
So again,
And the data,
make
and
those
and your
decisions.
definition of the data is purely just what will be the future tax impact of having just the 100% apartment.
Like I said, I think that's a part of it. I think the vision component needs to be tied to it as well. And that's what I would like staff to come back and make a recommendation for what we can do in the short term
so again, it's
to
two
get the
different
data we
things.
need for these UDC text
I
amendments.
see two different scope of possible here.
Well, let's let
One
staff
is
decide
for the
that.
text amendment, which is pretty much pure high-density residential, the text amendment.
Second.
Fine. So the second, can I continue with, yeah. So the second point is how commercial office will impact into the tax base. So
I
if
would
your
like
scope of
staff's
work,
recommendation on what kind of information we need to make the
Staff can't be put in a
decisions.
position to make policy decisions. They can give us, we need to give them direction on what we want, and I don't think it's totally clear to staff what we're asking for.
not for me. So your proposal is for the change of the UDC that is mainly for high-density residential development. That is correct?
I want to know the definition
Of what?
of the text amendments that are being proposed and what their impact is on, number one, achieving vision of the city. What their impact, what does that do to quality development, redevelopment, and then what's the economic impact? And I think those things are very tied together. I think it's hard to separate
So
them.
quality development, let's define it because it's very broad. And then the other thing is, so why don't you specify exactly which text amendment you're referring to for the scope of work of this person of concern?
So I don't under.
I'd like to make it more scope, more
Okay.
clear, so it's not
We're
broad and take advantage.
asking staff to bring us a scope of work, so then we can say, this is what we want, this is what we don't want, this is what we can do. I'm shocked today at the fight for information, for us getting information that we don't have that might go against some policies. I'm shocked.
I want it.
Like,
That's what
okay,
I've asked
well
for.
then
I
let's
wanna
do
support
it. Let's do
No.
it.
What I want is the high level.
No, you
You're in
want-
the weeds
you
for
want-
You want to discuss loopholes. I want to discuss we're closing the loopholes.
I want to
Let's
discuss it
discuss
all.
the big picture.
Let's discuss it all.
Okay, but let's make that.
I want to discuss.
We have a motion on the floor in a second. So the motion we have is to have staff come back with a proposal to the impacts of the UDC text amendments. Is that accurate? And we have a second on that. So I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. Just for the record, Mayor Henry has left the meeting. Councilmember Judy.
Yes.
Councilmember Palermo.
Opposed.
Councilmember Tizer.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes.
Councilmember Zapata.
Opposed?
Motion carries 3-2.
I gotta
need to
catch
leave,
a.
So Michael's going to carry on with the rest of the meeting in my stead.
Yeah, I gotta catch a plane as well. Sorry.
I've got about 25 minutes, so hopefully we can make our way through this in an efficient way.
Next item on the agenda is Councilmember Palermo. It's consideration to change the plan to cut through at the Mill Village from a two-way to a one-way street. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. So this was something that had been discussed and voted upon in, I believe, 2017 and 2018. And with that, and in multiple different forms. So actually, I think the official votes were probably 2018. But nonetheless, there is a current planned road improvement on I believe it's Elm Street. And a part of that, it's my understanding, is a current plan to change Elm Street from being a one-way to a two-way. And what I want to request of this council is that we make it so that Elm Street is not turned into two-way for automobiles, and instead initially continues, even with the road improvement, continues to be a one-way for automobiles. It's something this council could always explore in the future if wanting to turn it into a two-way. But my request is to not start immediately with it being a two-way. I'd like to discuss that, and certainly welcome to staff if they have any questions, comments, anything at all. But more focused towards this body and seeing if there's support for this initiative or not.
Comments?
So yeah, I think is since we're going to have a cut through a historic neighborhood, definitely waiting the opinion and wishes of the community who lives there and have to live with this every day. It's very important. So I'm definitely supporting whatever the community in this area, the majority of the community wants to have the least impact on this cut through. So if this is one way, the solution to minimize, not take away the impact, but to minimize the negative impact on the existing historic neighborhood, definitely I will support that.
So here's where I'm at on this. I can be supportive under a couple of conditions. Condition number one is that we discontinue using sound bites. There's no proof that it's a cut through. Okay? There's no proof that with a functional intersection, people would want to go through that way. I understand the concern of the residents, which is why I can be supportive, okay? But we have to stop using sound bites to describe it, okay? If we think there's a possibility of an issue or a problem, let's address that issue or a problem without using sound bites. So if we can do it without using sound bites, then I have a few other questions. Question number one is which way for the one-way, because it connects into Pleasant Hill. So which way does it go? Because Pleasant Hill is, I think, going to be two-way. Where does it start? Where does it stop? So I think I need that information from staff to determine which is the better way. Because I know there's some housing development going in, and if you make the wrong decision on the which way, then people can't leave their homes. So we got to figure that out, make sure that that can be done. I'm really curious as to what happens when the Oxbow intersection is functional. You know, right now, there's concern about cut-through because that intersection is completely dysfunctional. So when that intersection opens, and I've said this before in meetings, does it make it so that we actually, if it were two-way, does that improve the quality of life for the residents in that area, the residents that are there now and the future residents? And I would hate to preclude that without knowing really what happens. And so maybe we can put some sort of time frame on this, right, that says it's one way for some time frame, or I'm not sure how staff might recommend doing that, but I really understand the concern of the residents because they're reflecting off of that totally dysfunctional intersection that we have now. That neighborhood's going to change quite a bit when Maple Street continues to move. I know we made some changes in the Historic District Master Plan to help Maple Street. Maple Street right now goes only one way. Maybe it's Maple Street that should be two-way. There's a whole set of issues here that are a little bit more complex. I think we have some time here to get the input from staff on the questions I've asked. And if everybody's amenable to that, I think that's really would be my recommendation is Director Ruff and his staff come back and help us with those concepts, you know. So I think I've spelled them out pretty clearly, but I could be supportive of the concept. I really do understand the concern of the residents in the area. I can't tell if it's good, if it's necessarily good or bad once that interchange becomes functional.
And so, thank you for that input. I'd say, first of all, I do feel cut-through is an accurate description, but nonetheless, I'm fully supportive of making sure what we're voting on today and at council does not have the word cut-through in it. So that's one thing. Another thing, as for which direction, I'm certainly flexible. So definitely would love to have staff's input on that. And then lastly, I'm not comfortable with it just expiring and automatically turning to a two-way in the future. I am supportive of just agreeing and perhaps even scheduling that on X date it comes back to committee or comes back to council to discuss and to look at, because basically this came down to a disagreement I had, and I can't remember if it was in 2017 or 2018. I felt it should start as one way and could be turned two-way in the future. Others felt, and again, this might have been staff, it might have been 2017, I can't remember, but others felt that it could start as two-way, and if it was an issue, turn it into a one-way. And I believe that might have actually been staff that felt that way. But so I feel we're you know, the devil's in the details, but I feel we can certainly agree on item number 3.
So
Yeah, just a question. I just wondered if legally and even from a transportation standpoint, if there's a way to put certain hours, like during certain rush hours, it is one way versus two-way during the rest.
So it's my understanding that is legal. Because I feel I've seen that in a few different locations here. However, I have concern with it starting that way. I lean towards preferring maybe that's a next step, that maybe after a certain while, then it turns into that. But I have comfort with it just starting as that one way, but I am open to this.
Just one last thing. I don't think this is going to be completed before our next Transportation Committee meeting. So if it's possible for staff to come back, we've got some other items on the agenda. I think we've been pretty clear with what we're thinking about. If staff could come back with a series of recommendations for it, I think that would be great. Again, we're pressed for time here.
Yes, staff recommendation and opinion is very important, but at least from my perspective, the residents who live there day and night is very, 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 very important. They might give you how to move fast from A to B, but then the neighborhood, they know exactly how it's going to impact their life day and night. So I think that waiting only staff recommendation without a true recommendation from the community who lives again there day and night, we're missing more than half of the recommendations. So, and I want to weigh this quite a bit, what they have to say, how this is going to impact a cut-through or any other synonym that we can find in the dictionary we can use for this road.
I think that's exactly what I said, that I'm very concerned, and I understand the concern of the residents. And so you're not the only one concerned about the residents, and I object and I reject the fact that you think that's the case, okay? I've seen it, I've watched it, I'm very concerned, I understand why they're concerned. I don't know which way the road should go one way,
I'm not debating,
right?
I'm just giving my
There's
opinion.
new development going on back there, and we can't strand people in there because here at the council level, we told it to go the wrong way. So that's some of the things we need them to come back and tell us. But it is a real concern, it's a real issue, and we do have a time constraint here, so I'd like to be able to participate in the next couple of discussions. This isn't going to be an issue until the road's built.
I'm ready to make-
Right now, all we have is a bunch of orange barrels because of the rain.
Mr. Ralph, can you confirm with, or is there any chance prior to the next committee meeting that this road will be turning into a two-way?
So this is this piece that we're talking about, your suggestion is the existing piece of Elm Street that's currently one-way going south.
Correct.
That's the piece we are talking
Is
about.
there any chance that prior to the next committee meeting, that portion changes from being a one-way to two-way?
So that impact fee agreement got approved a couple of years ago, and there's a lot of prep work that still needs to be done. The developer hasn't moved much, so I don't think anything is going to happen in 1 month.
Okay, and so in that case, I motion to both move this item to the next transportation committee meeting. I'll let staff decide. I'm supportive of my motion will not include the word cut through being in it. And in my motion, my expectation is that staff is going to immediately alert us, and there'd be the potential, just so this council knows, if it was going to open up to a two-way, I would want to see a special called meeting prior to that happening. But again, based on Mr. Ralph's comments, I'm supportive moving it to the next one, as long as staff will tell us if we need to actually get together and open it up as a two-way.
Okay, so if that's the guidance we are going to get in the end, then we'll work that. But I just want to make sure you understand that this was a developer initiative supported by staff for a list of reasons and approved by the city council a couple of years ago. So the developer, they haven't necessarily done anything physically on ground, but they have been talking to us. They have found certain issues working with the utilities and all. So there may be some impacts,
I'm
some
not saying
claims.
construction's to stop, I'm not saying anything should stop. All I'm saying is RDOT is not gonna take down that one-way side, and RDOT's not gonna start allowing that to be a two-way. I'm not commenting on the road.
No, that cannot happen without the work that the developer is required to
The
do.
other thing to keep in mind is it doesn't really become a cut-through until the new section is built. And so that's what I'm referring to, is till that new section is built, and that's not going to be built in the next 30 days. I think that's pretty clear.
So motion to move this item to the next committee meeting, and again, with, I'll let staff come up with the wording for this.
Next ComDev Transportation Committee.
Yes.
So we'll have a motion to move this item forward to the next ComDev Transportation Committee meeting with the expectation that the one-way traffic remains one-way until that such time or we give notification.
Yes.
Possible
Thank
special
you.
meeting. Do I have a second?
Second, but, the project committee meeting, we won't have much, we don't have any citizen input. So maybe we can ask the citizens to write us a letter or something that we can read here, And, you know, so we
I don't need that as a
understand.
part of the motion, but that's always,
Well, I'm saying that, you know, the problem is like, you know, you don't have a
that's a good idea.
committee or citizens input.
So we have a motion in a second. Is there any further discussion on this? All in favor of moving this forward, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item number 12, brought forth by the member Palermo, which is consideration to create a committee to focus on downtown parking.
So this request came from some business owners within the historic district. And I know, I think I've heard some of the discussion is, do we want to create create an official parking committee and have them potentially partner with the DDA? Do we instead want to have the DDA kind of perhaps lead this effort and then just ensure that they're taking community input and maybe having a meeting with kind of community stakeholders and things like that? And this is something that my hope is we can find full unanimous consensus, because I feel we're not going to solve, you know, problems like this if we're not unanimous. And so my hope, I definitely want to see what we can get consensus on.
So, I'm wary of additional committees because committees are government's way of telling you to go away as a citizen. We already have an organization that's a state agency, has a charter, has the ability to fund things if needed. And I think giving this as a first assignment to the new DDA members, many of whom have a great understanding of the issue, and have the ability to do something with it. Now, having said that, we may need to help fund that, you know, fund the work that they're going to do. And I think that comes up potentially as item 13, but if we can discuss part of it, you know, here, I think that makes some sense. I think we may need to help fund it. I don't know if they have any money or not, but I don't want to wait. So if they need some funding to do this work, I'd like the commitment of this council to give them a reasonable amount of funding to do that. I think it's a great way for the new DDA to start. I really like the membership makeup of the group, and I think this is just a very good way, it's a very simple, easy way for them to start. And I think it gives our business community some hope that something actually gets done because we've given it to an official agency.
Would you support, and again, I think it's important that we're finding consensus and all that. So based on your comments, would you support a motion that we are going to task the DDA with one of their focuses to look at downtown parking, something along those lines? Is that something you'd support?
Sure. And that we would agree in a reasonable amount to be determined later that we'd fund it. Because what I don't want to have happen, right, is that there's no funding. Yes, sir. Bob, I think I've slipped into a bad place. Bob, does you?
Well, you use the word task, but they're a separate agency.
So
Request by resolution would be the proper means to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
So yeah, I think it's a great idea to request by resolution the DDA to pass this. And the fund would be good to know from them, because they've been charging tenants on the Southern Skillet for many years. So I'm sure they have a fund there that would be great to know how much is left on this fund after charging rent to tenants of the Southern Skillet for maybe, 4 years or so. So maybe they do have the funds that we don't need to use more taxpayers' money to fund this study. So I think it's important to know the DDA financial situation, if they can fund with the existing money they have, or they may have, or they should have, this kind of study.
And let me be just clear about what is missing here. It's unclear, because I don't want to just do a study to do a study and then nothing happen. That's nowhere near the intent here. But what I don't know today, and I'm going to use a ridiculous example just to make my point. I don't know if we need a parking deck with 1 space in it or 1 million spaces in it, because I don't know capacity, I don't know all those things. Now, some of that exists in some early days of someone who did that work, but before I could determine things like if I need one or where I'd put it, I need to know how big is it, okay? Because the last thing we want to do is build something that's too small or too big. And so that's the kind of work that I think DDAs are good for. And that's the only reason that I would want to do a study, is to determine what is it that we need, how much of it do we need, and then where do we need to go with it. And this is action-based. This isn't just, let's do it and put it on the shelf. That's why I want it to go to a group that, if needed, can find ways to actually fund it. They have legal ways to actually go do it. And that's why it's more important to do it that way in the committee, because you can actually get something done and funded.
Yeah, I was to say, I think the critical opportunity here is for council to say that they recognize there's an issue, we provide support for it, and we are looking to DDA to help us solve it, and to be very clear about that.
So.
There's a motion, I'll second it, let's go on, let's vote.
Michael, do you understand my motion?
So your motion was to support it, to request by resolution DDA to focus on parking.
And, yeah, did you want me to add in and if needed, council will have a to be determined amount of funding to ensure that this is looked at, something along those lines, is that?
If needed.
Yeah, and you can get the exact wording later that you feel is right, Michael.
Possible funding if needed.
Yeah, and I encourage, and in my motion, I want to make sure staff is rewording to ensure the intent is.
So you understand the motion is to request this resolution for DDA to focus on parking to include possible funding if needed.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item is item number 13. Did we just cover item number 13, Councilmember Wilsey?
Yes, actually, we did. I mean, the purpose of this was to provide support and direction to DDA and to provide our support for an assessment. And I think we've captured that. We will capture that in the resolution.
We'll move on then from 13.
Thank you very much.
14. Committee member Palermo has this to discussion on whether or not council members can use an open city facility for town halls like in 2017.
That's right. So the reason I brought this one back, as you're aware, is because in the last committee discussion, what it was discussed that staff would come up with a recommended policy, in which case council would potentially, vote on or decide a policy. But what wasn't discussed is in the meantime. In the meantime, are council members still able to use a city facility like done in 2017 for a town hall? Or is it determined that council members can no longer do that? It was discussed that the mayor does always have the authority to have a town hall, but this question is purely around, does a council member have the ability to? Did anybody get an answer? Was anybody clear on that from the last committee on what would happen in the interim prior to council deciding a policy?
So I think, Bob, were you here during that discussion, or was David?
David was here then, but the policy that has been in place since around 2011 or 12 is that any council member can sponsor a group at City Hall during normal business hours. And if you do it after hours, the group is responsible for whatever cost it is to have that. No individual council member, we were trying to figure out, you mentioned that 2017. The only thing we recalled was Mayor Wood had called a town hall one night, and then council, and we honestly can't remember whether it was an individual or.
So it was there was no vote. Two council members requested it prior to Mayor Wood's request.
Okay.
So Mayor Wood, after our town hall was scheduled, he scheduled, which is fully in his right. So there's no issues there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
But
Sponsored by three
the
council
policy, again, has been that that applies to City Hall, any individual council member. And you can always go to the mayor and request that she call the town hall.
That was not what happened in 2017. Yeah.
Well, I don't care what happened in 2017.
No, this is
what the policy is.
Right. No. What I'm saying is the policy in 2017 was two council members were able to. Yes.
I don't agree. That wasn't the policy. That's what happened, but that was not the policy.
And that's what happened more than once. And there's I haven't seen. Is there any policy that said that was not allowed?
Well, the policy that had been established back in 2012, the practice and the fact that that's what that council voted on to allow, that makes it a resolution and therefore a policy. There's been no change by vote of the entire council. The entire council can change it anytime it wants to.
And that's my whole point. No, my whole point is, so historically, a council member could request a not for themselves to have a town hall meeting outside of City Hall. There's discussion of putting a policy in place. I'm fully supportive of that. So actually, I have no issue. I think, this council always has the ability to regulate itself. So that's great. What I'm saying is between now, or really between 2017 and a new policy, where do we stand? And that's what I want to understand.
Councilmember Palermo, can I
Please.
give a little information? From an operational standpoint, from where I understood over this time, because in my judgment, it's been a lot of practice. In 2017, I remember when that came up, and at that time, Mayor Wood, in my opinion, wanted to be
Right.
get the jump on everything.
Which was in his right, but
So because of that, staff has not, we don't put in resources or help on individual town hall meetings anymore. I don't know if there's a policy out there.
there's no policy. Yeah, it's never came to council.
It's a practice. I know that there was a town hall that was done after that, and there was some signs that were made, some things like that.
Right.
Kind of a minor support.
Yep.
But since then, the understanding that we've kind of had from an operational standpoint is, of course, if the mayor or council calls for a meeting, you get 100% support from the staff. If one or two want to have a town hall meeting, by all means, have that meeting.
But I'm saying at a city facility.
And that would be okay during business hours, just like anybody else would. After business hours, it's just manpower. If we have to have a building open, then if you can get that scheduled, there's an opening, you could have that. There just wouldn't be a lot of support from staff.
The request is not for staff report. The request, so there was no request for staff support. The request was purely to use the East Roswell Park facility, just as was done in 2017.
Here's the issue that I think David tried to explain to us, but I'm not clear on it. But it is my concern. If all council members are involved, I think it's great. I think it's fine. What I'm concerned about is using taxpayer funds to fund what can look like a political rally. Okay? I think you're concerned about that too. I don't think you'd want us running our campaigns using taxpayer funds. And so I think establishing some rules around how it's done, I think Councilmember Zapata said it Monday night, if everyone's involved, if everyone's invited, what's the problem? Okay? That wasn't how it was originally set up, or at least my view of it. So, I think that's why we charged the legal department, in addition to Gary, in addition to the city administrator, to look at it and come up with a set of rules. I don't think we want to be having political rallies with taxpayer funds.
Yeah, so actually.
None of us do, and we don't want the appearance of that.
Right,
So that's why a set of rules are really important. That's why we asked David to get involved and make sure that we're acting in a proper way.
The good news is there's no municipal elections this year. So that is a concern for next year.
No, it's a concern all the time. It's an appearance, right?
So I think
that someone has started their campaign early, and I think it's very dangerous to go down the road of things looking like campaign rallies. It's just my opinion, and I'd like for us to try and mitigate that by having events, if we want to have an event like Councilmember Zapata described on Monday night, which was, all council members are involved.
Well, so keep in mind, even in 2017, it was open to the public. All elected officials were welcome. In fact, Mayor Wood, I believe, came. Mr. Orleans, I think, might have come as well. I can't remember.
One of the two.
I know Councilmember Wilsey and Mayor Henry came as candidates. But basically, it's who it's hosted by and who's invited different. And as for rally, I actually feel all 7 of us elected officials should be doing more to engage the public and have back and forth discussions that we're not able to have in council chambers. And when, during a work session or something like that, this is that opportunity. So I would like to vote and obviously, we're not ready for motion yet, I want to hear more discussion, but ultimately, I do want to make sure that we're encouraging, that we're engaging citizens as often as possible, and so want to make sure we are able to have these until council comes up with an official policy clarifying all the details and best practices.
So yeah, I was in 2017, part of the town hall. We were invited everybody. Some elected officials show up, some others didn't. Some others want to be there on the promotional material, to be there promoting the event, which is what the other thing important to do. So, it was a specific topic. It was a specific topic that concerned a specific part of the city. So it was held in East Roswell because we were talking about East Roswell economic development. So it's a specific topic open to all elected officials voluntarily. And then the other thing is that we don't have a policy neither for conversation with the council, which in a way is similar, but instead of being hosted in a restaurant with certain expense from taxpayers, this could be also held in a public and with very well promoted for a specific topic to be discussed with the community and the citizens and the people of Roswell. So I think that, again, like I said, pick and choose is not my first. Yeah, sorry, you have to leave. So pick and choose, if not what I support. So if we have conversation with the council, why not to have town halls the same way in a different location and maybe with much more citizens' involvement, engagement, and participation. So that is what I think that not allowing town halls because it's not a policy and allowing this conversation with the council because I don't know why, but anyway, it happened. So I think it's not fair. And we can do that tomorrow, a town hall, inviting everybody and with the right and proper promotion and publicity of the event for a specific 1, 2, 3 topics.
We'll ask Mr. Holmes for his comments now. Councilman Pelosi.
Conversations with council, my understanding is that there's a line item in the budget for helping fund that, and that is considered a resolution by council. So there's the authority there. You can do the same thing with this if you want to. The issue is the charter does not give individual council members the ability to call meetings. Only the mayor can do that.
And it's not an official meeting, though, is my understanding.
Informational.
Yes, and you as a private citizen can rent the room and then have whatever you want and be there as an elected official.
And that's a concern I have, that if this council or staff is trying to make it just more difficult and more red tape for residents to be able to actually be there and accountable to residents. So that's the thing I have concern with. It should be as easy as possible.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think staff is trying to create.
I'm just saying I wouldn't want to see that. It's a council decision.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we're following the policy and practice that council put in place 8 years ago. And that's been what was done, because this all came up when Betty Price wanted to have Republican events. And it was, okay, you can do it, but you have to sponsor it. It has to be here. It has to be.
Right, that's the thing. The town hall meeting didn't fall under that, so it would not have been allowed to sponsor an event at East Roswell Park for a different group. Whereas in this was a town hall to discuss city issues, which is.
Councilmember Wilson.
Yeah, sure. Just a couple of points. The town hall, the meeting that was held in 2017, if I remember correctly, was a panel discussion.
That was the choice of the council member.
That was organized to provide information and education to the community and get their feedback. Those are the kinds of things that I think we should be doing as a council together, collaboratively, much more often. And I would concur with Bob's reading, and my interpretation of the charter is that as an elected official, we should be acting collaboratively as a council at every opportunity. And by separating into individual town halls, it is just counter to that whole process.
Let me actually explain why, because I actually want to address that, because I actually agree. I think there should be more collaboration of all the council members. The problem is, I strongly believe that residents deserve a back and forth. So the problem is, what I don't want and don't consider the right town hall is, for example, we can think of many. We think of our Monday night meetings, think of town halls we've done, think of all these different things, where the resident gets up, has a question, has a comment, and then there's not the answer, all that stuff. And my goal with this is we have these amendments going on. I want to hear additional ideas from the residents. And if I hear an idea that says, here's what, I want to be able to tell them, I can't support that and here's why, and have that public discussion in front of everybody. Or I want the opportunity for a resident to say, Councilmember Palermo, why did you do X, Y, Z? And I owe them an answer. That's something that's not been allowed and not been an opportunity when there's the joint events.
So right now, until we have, because I know we're working on a policy with the administrator and legal, the mayor does have the ability to call these meetings when it's deemed appropriate or when requested. And I think the mayor even made the comment the other night, if it's requested, she will approve.
So I think,
During this interim process, can we not, what if instead of individuals calling and there's question of the charter, what have you done or not, why don't we just have the mayor call whatever those meetings, and if any of you at any time want to have town hall meetings, just make that request.
so I think you're bringing in good content and helpful thinking outside the box and adding, but it actually goes to the reason I just gave Councilmember Wilsey, is my goal is to have a meeting where someone can put me in the hot seat and hold me accountable, and I have to give them an answer on the thought process, all those different aspects. I think residents deserve more access to their elected officials and getting those type of responses, and that's something that I'm concerned doesn't happen when it's an entire council that doesn't want individuals talking or something like that, or a mayor having it run as a council type.
I'm suggesting just having her call the town hall meeting vote. Like if you wanted one, since there's not a mechanism to do that right now, have her call the town hall meeting and you have your town hall meeting.
Well, actually,
wait, wait.
I'd like
I would
support from
agree
this
with
body.
that.
I have a great solution.
I
You don't
want
need
that
support. The
collaboration
charter gives you that
back and
support you
I
need.
have a great solution. Town halls are conversation with elected officials. So conversation with the council, no, follow me the logic here. So town halls are conversations with elected officials. Conversation with the council is conversation with the council. So instead of doing it in a restaurant around beer and alcohol and maybe a smaller place, more reduced place, why don't we do this conversation with the council in a public facility, so we can engage and invite more people and promote it even harder, so we can have hundreds of people instead of 10, 15, 20, whatever number of people average show up to conversation with the council. So let's do a conversation with the council / parentheses town hall in a public area, which is bigger, more inviting for everybody, and then all council members who wants to come, the same policy, because it's not obliged to go to conversation with the council in a bar. It's not obliged, or in a coffee shop. So let's do it in a public facility, and then we call it conversation with the council in a public facility /
And Councilmember Wilsey,
So
I think that would actually
my favorite,
and we promote it properly.
but by far, my favorite venue to interact with citizens is the back and forth, one-on-one that we have at Conversation with Council. I learn so much. I leave those meetings, and we've had them deliberately in places where there was a big issue or something was going on. But I leave those meetings energized, excited for what I volunteered to do here and what I was elected to do. And I hear things that I didn't know about, okay? And I hear things that I can help get done. So that format is absolutely critical. That's a little different than what you might think of as a typical town hall.
I think both,
okay?
I agree with you.
And so I think Mr. Fisher has come up with a way to handle this. I would like to see the draft policy come up. I think it came up at which committee meeting did that come up? The admin? I'd like to see the draft policy at the next admin meeting, which is just a couple of weeks.
Well, so
If you need to do something between now and a couple of weeks, the mayor has graciously volunteered to make that happen through the normal process, so the citizens know where to look for the meeting. They know how to get to them. It's posted in a certain way. I think that's the way if you want to do it. Don't confuse people by trying to create something for a couple of weeks. She graciously offered to call whatever meeting you
Right,
wanted.
so actually, Councilmember Wilsey, I'm curious if I have your support for this, because again, what I've shared is my number one goal from it and my concern from a format standpoint. On the format standpoint, even though I love the one-on-one discussions and conversations with council, I think those are extremely valuable. I would never want to, eliminate that. At the same time, I also think it's valuable to have the format like the one you were at, where, think of not the panel part of it, but where residents were getting up, on the microphone, but then there was the back and forth, the answering. What I'd like to do is, would you support a public meeting at East Roswell Park where it's hosted by, which we can decide at a later point in time, whichever elected officials would like to be a part of hosting it, but it ends up taking on the format that I've described, and I work with staff on the format, knowing that all elected officials that choose to be a part of it will have an equal opportunity for speaking.
Yeah, so because, I participate in both formats. They're both totally different formats. They're both very productive format. Because also when you have a line of 20, 30 people lining up to talk on the microphone and leave it there on a recording, and so it's very important too. We have a line of 20 people probably waiting to come express their point, their view, their suggestion, their ideas. So I think both formats are very good. We shouldn't eliminate one versus the other one at all. There's totally two, and then there's two great formats to interact with the community in different ways. I don't see this or that. I think this and that, and then depends on the topic. If there is a specific topic, then we can choose one way, and if it's just generic conversation about just to listen to every idea and initiative, then we can do the other format. But I think that this or that is not the way to go here, and we can call, conversation with the council about this. In here, we want to hear what you have to say. So I think that, on the budget, there is budget for the conversation with the council. There's a line there for hospitality and events. Thank you. So we can use a hospitality and events line there too for events on a public facility. So if there is cost involved,
There'd be nothing purchased though.
well, but if it's a cost involved to overtime of employees to to prepare the building and to close the building, then we can use money from this line to pay this overtime of the city employees if it's needed. So we do have the budget, we have the money, we have the facility. It's just a matter of the desire to do it or not to do it in this way.
So Councilmember Wellesley, is that something, because you described.
So my thought going back to, and I think this needs a lot more work, what's missing in some ways from that is the education and information component of that process. I mean, for us to get up and talk over each other, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, we need to have a specific topic, and we need to have experts, maybe just like you guys did. You brought in a panel of experts to talk. Maybe we use this data that's coming back on the UDC amendments as part of that presentation, so that we have good information.
I have a motion.
In response.
I don't think we need a motion.
I think we do, yeah.
I don't think we need a motion, because here's what I'll support today.
Yeah.
I support you going to talk to the mayor and taking her gracious offer to schedule what you would like to schedule. It's in our charter. We just need to follow our charter. We don't need another motion.
We do, because basically I've described, I have a format where I want to ensure there's back and forth where residents feel responded to an answer. The charter doesn't say that's required.
Tell the mayor what you'd like to do, and she told you Monday night that she would agree to the process. So just tell her.
I would suggest
That's
a
what I'll support.
motion to expand the format of conversation with the council. So not only in a bar or in a coffee shop or in a restaurant, but also on a public facility where it can hold many more people and feel that you don't have to consume anything. You can walk freely in a public facility. And then we have the budget. We can use the same line from the budget for this. It's just expanding the format. That is a motion that I will totally support.
Is it either or?
So both.
I'm confused.
Both. No, either or, not both. Now is this or nothing. So what I'm proposing is to do conversation with the council, still in a bar, still in a restaurant, still in a coffee shop, and add one more format, which is in a public facility. So that is what I'm adding. I'm not just limiting, I'm expanding.
But I don't think that's what he wants.
Well, I'm suggesting to make a motion to expand this so we can do,
My concern is the expanding it still doesn't result in getting this exact meeting scheduled prior
Well-
to the moratorium being over, yeah.
well, could be, yeah, if we can move forward and say we expand the resolution that maybe, I don't know if the resolution specified a bar, a restaurant, a coffee shop. If he didn't specify where, then we can do conversation with the council in a public building about a specific topic. Doesn't have to be a general conversation on a one-to-one, could be a specific topic with the community.
And
I
so
don't
I
know.
think it comes down to, it's just my thing's more, long-term and focused. I strongly believe that elected representatives should be getting in front of residents more, not less. I feel citizens should be able to interact and get public responses more often, not less. And I think that's what's being stopped here. I'm not going to bother doing a motion because 2-2 fails. And I'm hearing that there's two of us supporting, wanting to make sure we are having those interactions. And I'm hearing there's.
I need to stop you right there because I support those interactions. It's my favorite venue to work with citizens. So
No, that's
I'm
one-on-one.
going to reject that premise.
Yeah.
Okay? But I will support talking to the mayor and getting this done because I think we could go on and discuss this until, 2 in the afternoon, or we can walk down to the mayor's office and ask her. And then it's done.
By chance, do we
Well-
have
And
legal?
by the way, Councilmember Zapata's idea is not a bad idea either for, as we put together whatever the final process looks like. Because where the interaction occurs is less important to me than the interaction occurs. And so, I really, whether it's downstairs, down the hall, in a gymnasium, I just like to have that interaction. It's really, really important to me. And so what I'd like us to do is let's just go get whatever it is you want. And if she rejects it, then we'll deal with it differently. But she graciously offered to do it, graciously.
Just one other point from me. We talked a lot on Monday night about the importance of public process, and I think that this moratorium and the UDC text amendments deserve a fair and open public process. So what we need to do is look and see what we're doing community engagement-wise as these move forward, whether or not that's a town hall with council or whether it's something staff-led or small neighborhood meetings or something. That I think that's something we can look at separately.
So I don't know if we have the resolution in front of us, and if the resolution specifies what kind of location should be this that is specified, restaurant, bars, coffee,
We can
retail
have that
shop.
ready for the next meeting.
So then, if it doesn't specify, I would like to make a motion that, if it doesn't specify, you can do it tomorrow.
Whatever the hell you want.
Right, you can do it tomorrow if it's not specified exactly the location that the conversation with the council have to occur. So, if it doesn't specify, we can do a conversation with the council through our assistant of the council in East Roswell Park. And then if it's a cost involved, we have a line right now available to use to cover the extra hours of personnel to close the facility. So, I don't know if this is something.
It seems like we have two very good solutions. And if you guys are okay, I'd move to adjourn.
This item is a discussion or a motion. If the only motion we have is to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, adjourn? Raise your hand.
Adjourn.
That's unanimous.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.